Chapter 491. 9 Amplifications Sect. In an elegant and secluded palace. Only the mystic emperor could reside in this palace. Ever since the Qin clan had moved to the Blazing Sun Galaxy's virtue residence star, the mystic emperor She had spent most of her time in the 9 Amplifications Sect. This had also caused the 9 Amplifications Sect master to be extremely cautious every single day. At this moment, the sect master of the 9 Amplifications Sect was respectfully walking into the palace. "Your Majesty, Qin Yu has returned." The 9 Amplifications Sect's sect master bowed and said. He simply did not dare to raise his head to look at She. She was dressed in a long white robe. Her long hair draped over her shoulders and reached all the way to her hips. "After leaving for more than 10 years, you're finally back?" There was a faint smile on She's face. "All right, you can leave first." "Yes, Your Majesty." The 9 Amplifications Sect master bowed and retreated. After leaving the palace, the 9 Amplifications Sect's sect master heaved a long sigh of relief. He muttered in his heart. Back then, when Emperor Yu died, not only did His Majesty not seek revenge, he instead treated Qin Yu's family so well. And now, he is so concerned about the movements of the Qin family. Exactly what is he planning to do? Even the mystic emperor's trusted aide, the 9 Amplifications Sect master, didn't know what the mystic emperor wanted to do. Many of the mystic Thearka's people had become a part of the Qin clan. One of her disciples had even become Fenjiuzi's wife. Not long ago, another woman under her command had become the wife of the Qin clan's genius, Qin Nan. Qin Nan was Qin Feng's grandson. Because of this, the mystic the Arch also obtained a lot of confidential information about the Qin clan. For example, Qin Yu once said that he would probably ascend within a few hundred years. Back then, Qin Yu didn't know when he would go through the tribulation. He only guessed it based on the time of the Azure the Arch. Inside the palace, she sat in front of the dressing table, her gaze distant. "Brother Fengyu, did you know? Rumor has it that Qin Yu is going to undergo his divine tribulation in a few hundred years. You don't have to wait too long for your revenge. I'll be able to take it in a few hundred years." She's voice is very gentle. "Big brother Fengyu, it's been so many years. I've also become the mystic emperor of the immortal realm. However, my happiest days are still the days when you were Emperor Yu and I was the mystic emperor. Unfortunately, you're dead." The mystic the Arch was someone with ambition and desire for power. She liked to be high above others, to control others, and to order others around. The divine realm is an even vaster battlefield. To make a name for oneself there is much more difficult than the immortal, devil and demon realm. But before that, I will definitely avenge you. The mystic the Arch stood up and walked to the entrance of the palace. He looked up at the boundless sky. "Qin Yu, brother Fengyu was killed by your men. This time, I'll let you know what it means to be too late for regrets, and what it means to die a crazy death." She's eyes flashed with a trace of cruelty. "Qin Yu, I will make you despair. I will make you die in madness." At this moment, the temperature around the palace seemed to have plummeted. In one of the courtyards in the Qin mansion, there were only Qin Yu, Qin De, and Qin Feng. Originally, Qin Yu had said that he would only be gone for a few years at most. Unexpectedly, 10 years had passed in such a short period of time. Qin Yu himself also did not expect that a grand mist spiritual treasure would be so hard to forge. And this was with the help of the flower paste energy within his astral space. The three of them discussed. "What? You still have about 90 years before the divine tribulation." Hearing Qin Yu's words, Qin De and Qin Feng couldn't help but be shocked. The date of Qin Yu's divine tribulation was truly too close. Qin Yu nodded and said, "That's right. With the divine tribulation coming so soon, there's nothing I can do. Royal Father, Big Brother, it's extremely difficult for you to cultivate to the 9th level of Immortal Emperor, and pass the divine tribulation to ascend to the divine realm. Even if you succeed, it will still take a very, very long time." Qin Yu had a trace of bitterness in his heart. Just by looking at how many emperor-level experts there were in the immortal, devil and demon realm, one would know how difficult it was to reach the 9th level of immortal emperor. In the entire Qin family, other than Qin Yu, it was already extremely difficult for another person to reach the 9th level of immortal emperor. This is our good fortune. Qin De patted Qin Yu's shoulder and comforted him. Don't feel sad for us. The divine realm is definitely more dangerous than the immortal, devil and demon realm. However, in the immortal, devil and demon realm, we can at least live peacefully. Qin Feng said heroically. Little you, in the boundless immortal, devil and demon realm, who knows how many trillions of people there are. To you the stage might be too small. However, to us it's already big enough. Qin Yu immediately thought it through. To allow his family to live in the immortal, devil and demon realm, wasn't that a kind of happiness? Divine realm. Qin Yu couldn't even guarantee that he would be able to live freely. What if he were to protect his family? However, once he ascended, how many years would it take for him to meet his family again? 100,000 years. 1,000,000 years. 100,000,000 years. Even Qin Yu himself didn't have the slightest certainty. Qin Yu couldn't help but clench his fists tightly and frown. He flipped his hand and took out a scroll-like item. Royal Father, Big Brother, this item is called the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. Qin Di and Qin Feng had also heard of the famous 10,000 Beasts Atlas. However, at this moment, they were puzzled as to why Qin Yu would take it out. With a thought from Qin Yu, Yi Chu, Wu Lan and Ao Wushu appeared in the courtyard. Qin Yu, Yi Chu and the other two, including the cold and indifferent Ao Wushu, all looked at Qin Yu in shock. Qin Yu lightly smiled and said, "Don't doubt it. That's right, I've already removed the soul binding on you. From today onwards, the three of you have regained your freedom. No one will obstruct you." Yi Chu, Wu Lan and Ao Wushu all stared at Qin Yu. "Royal Father, since you're in control of the Qingyu Immortal Mansion, then this 10,000 Beasts Atlas shall be controlled by Big Brother. Big Brother, drip your blood on it and become its master. From today onwards, you're the new master of the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. The spirit beasts within it will also be under your control." Qin Yu directly handed the 10,000 Beasts Atlas to his big brother. Qin Feng looked at the 10,000 Beasts Atlas in front of him and then looked at Qin Yu. He was momentarily stunned. Qin De was the first to come back to his senses. He promptly said, "This 10,000 Beasts Atlas is extremely useful, why don't you want it?" "I don't need it. There are only 3 spirit beast spaces within the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. The highest is only Emperor level. Bringing it to the divine realm would be useless. Instead, it would be extremely useful in the immortal, devil and demon realm," Qin Yu explained. Qin Yu originally also viewed the 10,000 Beasts Atlas as important. However, from Uncle Fu he knew that, in the divine realm, the 10,000 Beasts Atlas was merely a type of entertainment divine artifact. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy for immortal Emperor Ni Yang to obtain it. The 10,000 Beasts Atlas had a total of 3 spaces. It could contain 3 different levels of demonic beasts. However, the strongest demonic beast that it could store was only a level 9 demon emperor. In the divine realm, level 9 demon emperors were merely pets. This 10,000 Beasts Atlas was merely a cage used to imprison some pets. Of course, as long as the master does not remove the soul binding of the tamed spirit beast, even if it reached the heavenly deity level, it would still be controlled. However, to imprison a demon emperor-level demonic beast, and then nurture it to the heavenly deity level for one's own use, this sort of difficulty was many times greater than hiring 10 heavenly deities. Thus, the 10,000 Beasts Atlas was only relatively powerful in the immortal, devil and demon realm. "Qin Yu, I am also not interested in the immortal, devil and demon realm. Why don't you let me enter the Jianglan's realm and continue my training? When you go to the divine realm you can just casually bring me along," said Wu Lan with a light smile. Ever since he saw the Jianglan's realm, Wu Lan had never thought of leaving the divine realm. That was because Wu Lan knew how important it was to have a powerful backer in the divine realm. I am also not interested in the immortal devil and demon realm. Yi Chu's loud voice sounded. O Wushu also coldly looked at Qin Yu. His meaning was very clear. He was also not interested in the immortal devil and demon realm. Qin Yu shook his head and said, Yi Chu Ao Wushu, in 90 years, I will be undergoing my divine tribulation. Although the two of you are level 9 demon emperors, your divine tribulation ought to be much later than mine. Yi Chu and Ao Wushu were both startled. Generally, to reach level 9 demon emperor, one would need several tens of thousands of years or even longer to undergo their divine tribulation. That's short, said Ao Wushu with a frown. That's right, it's very short. Thus, the two of you are unable to follow me to the divine realm. If the two of you feel that the outside world is boring, you can temporarily live in the Qin mansion. If you have nothing to do, you can accompany Hei Tong, Guofan and them. Qin Yu said with a light smile. Ao Wushu and Yi Chu nodded. No matter how fast their cultivation speed was, it was impossible for them to undergo their divine tribulation before Qin Yu. It was already dangerous for Qin Yu and his brothers to undergo their divine tribulation together. If the two of them also wanted to undergo their divine tribulation together, 4 or 5 people to undergo their divine tribulation. Even Qin Yu did not have the slightest certainty. Thus Ao Wushu and Yi Chu did not mention it. Big brother, royal father, with the Qin Yu immortal mansion and the 10,000 beasts atlas, I am also at ease. Qin Yu smiled as he looked at his royal father and big brother. Qin Di and Qin Feng glanced at each other. They were both moved. Little Yu, thank you, said Qin Yu. As he looked at the Qin Yu before him, the image of the 7 or 8-year-old child from back then appeared in his mind. The child who soaked in the hot spring together with him. This is my third brother. Sometimes when Qin Feng thought about it, he would also feel as if he was dreaming. Qin Yu waved his sleeve. A large group of people appeared in the courtyard. This group of people had very strange appearances. Although some of them were humanoid, they possessed large tails. Some of them were furry balls. However, the majority of them still had the appearance of humans. Lord. These 80-plus people bowed and said simultaneously. They were very grateful to Qin Yu. That was because Qin Yu had released them from the bewitching God Temple. That's right, they were the 80-plus pets from the bewitching God Temple. Qin Yu nodded. The majority of you possess Emperor-level strength. 3 of you possess King-level strength. You all came from other cosmic spaces. And from today onwards, I hope that you all can promise me one thing. Lord, please speak. These 80-plus people said simultaneously. Before you all ascend to the divine realm, you all can be considered as my Qin family's consecrators. You all will protect my Qin family. However, I am not very clear about your temperament. You all can directly enter the 10,000 beasts atlas. I will make my big brother swear that after you all pass the divine tribulation, he will release your soul bindings. Qin Yu said indifferently. As he spoke, Qin Yu's body emitted a powerful aura. No matter what, Qin Yu was unwilling to gamble with his own clan. Thus, having these 80-plus people enter the 10,000 beasts atlas was the safest method. These 80-plus people couldn't help but hesitate. They could only look at Qin Feng. I, Qin Feng, swear that the spirit beasts in this 10,000 beasts atlas, once a spirit beast passes the divine tribulation, I will immediately release his soul bindings. If I violate this oath, I shall be struck by divine lightning and have my soul scattered. Qin Feng was very straightforward. Hearing Qin Feng's oath, those 80-plus people immediately relaxed. After all, they had nothing to do before they ascend to the divine realm. So what if they protected the Qin family? After all, Qin Yu had also allowed them to regain their freedom. When they thought of that cage and being unable to leave it, they felt their hearts palpitate. After arranging all of this, Qin Yu's heart calmed down a bit. These 80-plus people, every single one of them were extremely special in their original universe. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been taken as pets by Che Ho Yuan. These 80-plus people, every single one of them possessed mystical abilities. Some of them were even more abnormal than super divine beasts. For example, Wulan from back then. Wulan was also one of them. Just like that, Qin Yu lived his peaceful days in the Qin mansion. Because there was nothing much going on in the Dark Star realm, Qin Yu only sent a transmission saying that he was going to train. Thus, no one came to ask him about it. Such days continued for 50 years. This time, the Qin family held a banquet. Of course, they also invited some outsiders. Only the people of the Qin family were allowed to enter the Qin mansion. Normally, the banquet would be held in a palace halfway up the mountain. At this moment, a large number of people were gathered in the palace. The majority of the people of the Qin family were here. However, this time even the Mystic Emperor was here. That was because the Mystic Emperor was the master of Fenjiuzi's wife. The main hall was very lively. A large number of people were gathered together. Qin Yu, Qin Feng, Kuroa's family, Qin De, Fenjiuzi and the others. The banquet had yet to start, but the large group of people were already chatting with each other. Little Yu, Fenjiuzi and a red-clothed beautiful woman walked over. Uncle Feng, Aunt Feng. Qin Yu lightly smiled. Qin Yu also felt a bit of a headache toward Fenjiuzi. That was because Qin Yu suspected that the Mystic Emperor was plotting something. Thus, he was also suspicious of the Mystic Emperor's disciple, Uncle Feng's wife, Lian Yu. Brother Qin Yu, I've heard that you'll be undergoing your tribulation in about 40 years. A gentle voice sounded. With a slight smile on her face, the Mystic Emperor Xian Shi walked over. When Qin Yu saw Xian Shi, he was slightly startled. There were not many people in the Qin family who knew that he would be undergoing his tribulation in about 40 years. How did the Mystic Emperor know about it? Could she be Uncle Feng's wife? Qin Yu immediately smiled, nodded and said, Xian Shi, when will you be undergoing your tribulation? It's still early for me. Xian Shi smiled and said, Big brother. Hou Fei's voice sounded from behind. Qin Yu smiled and said, Xian Shi, you can chat with others first. Excuse me. Qin Yu turned around and walked toward Hou Fei. Xian Shi looked at Qin Yu's back and had a slight smile on her face. She thought to herself, Qin Yu, 40 years. You still have 40 years to live. Your Qin family also only has 40 years to live. Chapter 492. Time passed. In a blink of an eye, 40 years had passed. On a barren planet not far from the Virtue resident star, it was incomparably hot. Even the sand on the ground was cracked by the heat. At this moment, over 100 people were gathered on this planet. Every single one of them had smiles on their faces. They were excitedly chatting with each other. The blazing temperature did not affect them in the slightest. Royal Father, this time, Little Yu is going to undergo the divine tribulation together with Hou Fei and Kuro. Isn't this a bit reckless? Qin Feng was standing together with Qin De. Even now, Qin Feng was still somewhat apprehensive. Qin De lightly smiled and said, I am at ease when Yu does things. For him to dare to do this, he definitely has absolute certainty. Qin De, you've given birth to a good son. A clear voice sounded from the side. Xian Shi, who was wearing a jade green gown, walked over. Qin De and Qin Feng were both puzzled. In these years, they had met Xian Shi no less than 100 times. Xian Shi usually wore pink, purple or white. This was the first time they had seen a jade green gown. Qin De smiled and asked, Your Majesty, Mystic Emperor, we have never seen you in this outfit before. Wearing a jade green gown, she had the bearing of a little girl. I have worn it in the past. It's just that I haven't worn it for many, many years. Qin De, this time, Brother Qin Yu dared to undergo the divine tribulation together with 3 people. This is something that has never been heard of in the history of the immortal devil and demon realm. Xian, she said with a smile. Qin De shook his head and sighed. You insisted on doing this. Even if I tried to persuade him, it would be useless. Brother Qin, there's no need to worry about Little Yu. Fenjiuzi and his wife Lian Yu also walked over side by side. She suddenly frowned and glanced at the 80-plus people in the distance. She was puzzled. Who exactly are these 80-plus people? How come over 80 of them are Emperor-level experts? Furthermore, I can't even recognize their true forms. Those 80-plus people were precisely the 80-plus demon beasts from various cosmic spaces that Qin Yu had come out from back then. In fact, ever since these 80-plus people voluntarily became spirit beasts of the 10,000 Beasts Atlas, they had never entered the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. That was because it was too difficult to open the third layer of the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. And the rest of them had always been living outside. It was the same logic as when Immortal Emperor and I Yang died. Wu Lan and Yi Chu were excluded from the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. Brother Qin, I don't think I've seen these 80 people before? She asked doubtfully. Qin Feng said, Your Majesty, these 80-odd people are consecrators of my Qin clan. They usually live in the Qin residence. It is normal that Your Majesty she has not seen them before. The mystic the Arch had indeed never entered the Qin residence, or the Qingyu immortal abode. She smiled and nodded. However, she thought to herself, I didn't expect the Qin clan to have such a group of experts. In terms of the number of Emperor-level experts under their command, they are actually not inferior to me. The first step of this revenge plan is to kill Qin Yu and mess up his mind. Then, he will be invaded by the Heart Devil during the Third God Tribulation and be destroyed by the God Tribulation. Although the strength of these 80-plus consecrators is not bad, when I get close to Qin, their strength is even weaker than mine. There's no way they can stop me. She already had a plan for revenge. There were 2 steps to the revenge plan against Qin Yu. Back then, when she first discovered the Qin clan, she originally wanted to kill the Qin clan directly. However, later on, she understood that if she killed the Qin clan, it would only anger Qin Yu and he would kill her to vent his anger. After that, Qin Yu would no longer be worried about his family. He would be free from the shackles. His cultivation might be faster and his achievements might be even higher. Her target for revenge was Qin Yu. She didn't want Qin Yu to have greater achievements. Hence, she formulated this plan. Your strength is strong. Terrifyingly strong. She stared at Qin Yu, who was meditating in the distance. Qin Yu, Hou Fei, and Kuro were all sitting cross-legged at the place where they were undergoing the God Tribulation. They were quietly waiting for the God Tribulation to descend. However, Qin Yu, you are too arrogant. The 3 of you are undergoing the God Tribulation together. The power of the God Tribulation isn't just 3 times. It is 8 or 9 times. It might even be more than 10 times. I refuse to believe that once the Heart's Devil enters your body, how would you be able to withstand the 3rd Great Divine Tribulation that is more than 10 times stronger? Hatred was surging in Xianxi's heart. However, she still maintained a tranquil expression. Once the Heart's Devil successfully invaded one's body, it would be an extremely frightening thing. If Qin Yu were to be invaded by the Heart's Devil and lose his intelligence, then perhaps he might be able to preserve his life by relying on the gold punishment spiritual pearl. However, without Qin Yu's assistance, Hou Fei and Kuro would be in danger if they wanted to withstand the God Tribulation. I refuse to believe that your mind won't be shaken when you witness your royal father's death during the God Tribulation. She sneered in her heart. Once your mind is shaken and the Heart's Devil enters your body, it will be the time of your death. This was the only plan that she believed to have a chance of success. She couldn't think of a better plan. It's him. Xianxi's pupils suddenly shrunk. She saw a person. She would never forget the person who killed her husband, Emperor Yu, with a single punch. At this moment, that dark and thin man was together with 2 other people. These 3 people all gave her a powerful aura. 3 level 9 demon emperors. Xianxi's heart violently trembled. Standing not far away were Wu Lan, Yi Chu, and Ao Wushu. The 3 of them had also come to watch Qin Yu and his brother's divine tribulation. Not long ago, Wu Lan had finally reached level 9 demon emperor after training in the 2nd layer space of the Jianglan's realm. Humph, 3 level 9 demon emperors will not be able to affect my plan. I'll get closer to Chinda so that when I'm about to kill him, I'll kill him. I reckon those 3 level 9 demon emperors would only be able to react in time. Furthermore, even if they were to discover me, they would not be able to save me in time. She was very confident. She possessed a divine armor. Furthermore, she only needed a single move to kill Chinda. If she were to be next to Chinda and suddenly attack him, even if Yu hadn't undergone the God tribulation, he would likely only be able to react in time. To save him in an instant was practically impossible. Master, the divine tribulation is about to descend. Come over here and watch. The beautiful woman Lian Yu said respectfully. She lightly smiled and said, "Okay." As she said that, she walked over to Chinda's side. At this moment, the people that were watching Yu's divine tribulation were separated into 3 large groups. The first group was the group of people at the very front. This group of people were Qin De, Qin Feng, Fengjuzi and his wife, Qin Feng's daughter, Qin Feng's grandson Qin Nan, and some of the Qin clan's descendants with relatively high status. Of course, this also included Xian Shi, who was beside Qin De and Fengjuzi. The second group was the other Qin clan's clansmen, some of the younger generation's descendants. This group of people were right behind Qin De and them. The third group was the 80-plus consecrated. At the same time, Yi Chu, Wu Lan, Ao Wushu and them were also at the edge of this region. Xian Shi and Qin De were standing side by side. At the same time they were chatting and laughing with each other. Qin De, you don't have to worry about brother Qin Yu. I believe that he will definitely successfully pass the divine tribulation. She said to Qin De with a smile on her face. Qin De lightly nodded and said, "In that case, I thank your Majesty Mystic Emperor for your auspicious words." And at this moment, rumble. Boundless black clouds rolled about. In an instant, the sky above the entire desolate planet was covered by a layer of roaring and rolling black clouds. Within the black clouds were surging lightning. Qin Yu and his 2 brothers, who were sitting cross-legged, had the space within a circumference of 10 miles around them completely distorted. "Big brother, it's about to start." Ho Fei was the first to open his eyes. Kuro also opened his eyes and raised his head to look. Qin Yu was the last to open his eyes. With a trace of a smile, he looked at the rolling black clouds in the sky. "The 3 of us are going through the divine tribulation together. I do want to see exactly how powerful the divine tribulation is." The 3 brothers stood up at almost the same time. Their bodies were as straight as poles. The long robes on their bodies fluttered without any wind. Boom! Following a bolt of lightning that struck down from the black clouds, instantly, there were tens of thousands of lightning snakes that simultaneously bombarded the area within a circumference of 10 miles around them. Facing the tens of thousands of lightning bolts, Qin Yu and his 2 brothers were still standing with their hands behind their backs. They raised their heads to the sky and didn't seem to care at all. The genius of the Qin clan, Qin Feng's grandson, Qin Nan, was currently staring at the scene before him without blinking. His mouth was slightly opened and he was gasping for breath in a low voice. The figures of Qin Yu and his 2 brothers were like gods in his heart. "One day, I want to be like them too," Qin Nan thought to himself. Qin Nan wasn't the only one. The Qin clan, including the consecrators and the others, were all watching the scene before them. Looking at the lightning snakes that filled the sky, they were also shocked by the scene before them. There are already tens of thousands of lightning snakes surging before the divine tribulation. This has never happened before. She seemed to be worried. The divine tribulation this time might be very powerful. Beside her, Qin De, Qin Feng, and the others were also worried. Xi's immortal awareness was able to clearly observe the expressions of Qin De, Qin Feng, Feng Yuzi and them. She was unable to refrain herself from laughing in her heart. Qin Yu, oh Qin Yu. Merely by looking at the tens of thousands of lightning serpents before the arrival of the divine tribulation, I was able to tell the might of this divine tribulation. Originally, I did not have 100% certainty as to whether or not my plan would succeed. However, now it would appear that even the heavens are helping me. Suddenly, a stream of blood seemed to be emerging from the boundless rolling black clouds. The blood was becoming more and more abundant. An enormous blood-red cloud emerged from the black clouds. The blood cloud was at least 10,000 miles in circumference. Huff, huff. Rapid breathing sounds could be heard unceasingly. The disciples of the Qin clan who were watching the battle from afar felt a pressure that originated from their souls due to the pressure of the tribulation clouds. Rays of light could be seen flickering. The consecrators of the Qin clan, Wu Lan, Mystic Emperor, and the others had all set up enormous restrictions. They were protecting the crowd. An unprecedented divine tribulation. Xian Shi's eyes emitted rays of light. The 10,000 miles wide blood cloud was revolving like a sea of blood. Within it, a millstone with a circumference of 10 miles slowly emerged. Within this millstone, dark blue-colored lightning was flowing. 81 lightning bolts. Qin Yu, who was looking up, slightly frowned. Xiao Hei Fei. Even the Cyan Emperor and Gold Punishment Lord Xing Yuan's first divine tribulation only had 9 dark blue-colored lightning bolts. However, our divine tribulation has 81 lightning bolts. The power of our divine tribulation is not merely 9 times. The amount has become 9 times the original amount. Through the amplification of the ancient formation, the power has increased by over 10 times or even more. Qin Yu's expression was a bit solemn. It seemed that he was still a bit careless. When the 3 of them were undergoing the divine tribulation at the same time, the power of their divine tribulation would be too terrifying. Big brother, leave the first divine tribulation to me. Ho Fei laughed. I have just mastered the heaven-startling single-stick strike. Let's use this to test it out. Qin Yu frowned slightly. Fei, from what I've seen of the first divine tribulation, 81 dark blue-colored lightning bolts have formed an ancient formation. Its power is extremely powerful. Even if you were to block it, I reckon you would still be injured. Monkey and I will attack together. The white-clothed Kuro said. His voice was still ice-cold. If Monkey uses the heaven-startling single-stick strike, I will use the heaven-startling single spear. Should be enough. Qin Yu nodded. Rumble. The ancient formation millstone, which was formed by 81 dark blue-colored lightning bolts, gradually descended from the sky. The millstone, which had a radius of 10 miles, was exactly the same size as the area where Qin Yu and the other 2 were undergoing the tribulation. As the millstone gradually descended, the tribulation area started to tremble. Swish! Swish! Ho Fei and Kuro were like arrows that left the bow. They soared into the sky at the same time and rushed towards the huge ancient formation millstone. The surrounding Qin clan members, the mystic the arch, and the 80-odd consecrators were all watching the scene in front of them carefully. Suddenly, a huge stick shadow and a spear shadow appeared. Bang! Bang! These 2 loud sounds were heard almost at the same time as the huge stick shadow and spear shadow appeared. At the same time, the huge stick shadow and spear shadow pierced through the ancient formation millstone. The millstone, which had a radius of 10 miles, began to disintegrate. Subsequently, the 81 dark blue-colored lightning bolts broke free from the restraints and flew in all directions. Without the amplification of the ancient formation, the dark blue-colored lightning bolts were unable to harm Qin Yu and the other 2. Big brother. Ho Fei and Kuro appeared beside Qin Yu with a swish sound. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. Not bad. Ho Fei raised his head and looked at the blood clouds that spanned 10,000 miles. However, the ancient formation millstone was truly powerful. Mixed Hairbird and I worked together and felt the terrifying recoil. I will block the second divine tribulation. Qin Yu smiled and said. Ho Fei and Kuro didn't say much. They knew how powerful Qin Yu was. The second divine tribulation was the divine fire tribulation. Against the divine fire tribulation, Qin Yu was actually 100% confident. That was because Qin Yu possessed the Grand Mist's spiritual treasure, Refining Flame Wristband. Through the Refining Flame Wristband, he would be able to easily subdue the divine fire. However, Qin Yu knew that some experts of the divine realm were able to observe his divine tribulation through the divine tribulation. Thus, it was best not to use the Refining Flame Wristband. It would be sufficient to rely on the Grand Mist's spiritual treasure, Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl. Chi. The 10,000 miles of blood clouds separated into two circles. They began to rotate in opposite directions. Traces of black-colored flames began to appear at the intersection of the two circles. The black-colored flames produced by the 10,000 miles of blood clouds were extremely astonishing. The black-colored flames gathered and formed a black-colored fireball. That's right, it was a black-colored fireball. This black-colored fireball had a diameter of 1,000 meters. At this moment, this black-colored fireball smashed down with lightning speed. As for Qin Yu, he raised his head and looked at it with a slight smile on his face. Chapter 493. Just like that, the enormous black fireball with a diameter of 1,000 meters smashed down. When it arrived above Qin Yu and the other two, it seemed to have covered the sky and covered the earth. Only the sound of the air vibrating could be heard. Chi. This 1,000-meter diameter black fireball actually completely covered Qin Yu and the other two. At the same time, it began to burn unceasingly. If it was a single person undergoing the divine tribulation, then the amount of divine fire would be relatively small. Secondly, it would only burn for a short moment before dissipating. However, this black fireball with a diameter of 1,000 meters continued to burn. Purgatory. At this moment, the area undergoing the divine tribulation was like purgatory. The black divine fire was madly burning. However, no matter how madly the divine fire burned, Qin Yu and his brothers were not harmed in the slightest. Ho Fei and Kuro stood behind Qin Yu. As for Qin Yu, he spread open his arms. A dazzling golden light barrier covered an area of 3 meters with Qin Yu as the center. That light barrier was like a semicircle. Just like that, it protected Qin Yu and the other two. No matter how much the black divine fire burned, it was unable to penetrate the golden light barrier in the slightest. Seeing Qin Yu spreading open his arms and holding up the golden light barrier, everyone present felt a burst of pressure. So powerful! Xianxi's expression also changed. Qin Yu, I never expected that you would be even more powerful than I imagined. In the previous divine realm, the duration of the second great divine fire tribulation was always very short. However, this time around it lasted for close to 20 breaths of time. With such a large amount of divine fire for such a long period of time, even a high-quality divine artifact would likely be melted. Very miraculously, that purgatory-like black divine fire that covered the sky instantly turned into nothingness and disappeared. The second great divine tribulation had been passed. Grandfather, third grandfather is so powerful. Qin Nan stood beside Qin Yu. His eyes were fixed on Qin Yu. His eyes were filled with admiration. Such astonishing strength, it was truly too astonishing. Qin Feng also nodded. His eyes were also filled with excitement. His third brother, the little Yu from back then, had already become so powerful. As for the Qin clan's disciples, their eyes were filled with pride. At the same time, they were exclaiming in admiration via voice transmission. However, the face of one of the disciples beside Qin De was ugly. Qin Yu, you are stronger than I thought. Xianxi looked at Qin Yu and her pupils shrank. If I don't do anything, you might really be able to pass the third god tribulation. Xianxi took a glance at the 3 level 9 demon emperors from the corner of her eyes. She simply did not dare to use her immortal awareness to investigate. She was worried that she would be discovered by Wu Lan, Yi Chu and Ao Wushu. At this moment, the only people that she was truly wary of at the scene of the Tribulation Transcendence battle were these 3 people. As for the 80 or so consecrators, they were all weaker than her. It was impossible for them to stop her. They are at least 100 meters away from me. If I suddenly attack and kill Qinda, they won't be able to stop me. She glanced at Qinda, who was only 3 or 4 meters away from her. With Xi's attack speed, she could kill Qinda within 3 to 4 meters. Those 3 level 9 demon emperors were simply unable to react in time. Fei Xiaohe, this third divine tribulation's heart's demon is extremely powerful. Furthermore, with the 3 of us undergoing the divine tribulation together, I reckon that this heart's demons might will also increase by a lot. As your soul's level is not very high, I will take the initiative to eliminate this heart's demon. As for the divine lightning, I am confident that I will be able to eliminate it. You all merely need to watch. At this moment, Qin Yu was filled with confidence. "I truly sullen," Ho Fei said helplessly. "If I were to undergo the divine tribulation by myself, I would definitely be able to act arrogantly. However, this divine tribulations might has increased by over 10 times or even more. As for this third divine tribulation, I do not dare to block it. Who asked Mixed Hairbird and I to go to the divine realm together with Big Brother? We can only let Big Brother be in the limelight." Hey Yu also smiled at the side. Hearing that, Qin Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was the one who took on the third divine tribulation, yet he said that he was in the limelight. This Ho Fei. Qin Yu didn't know what to say. Suddenly, Qin Yu felt his heart palpitate. He had an extremely bad feeling. What's going on? Qin Yu instantly swept his gaze towards the person undergoing the divine tribulation in the distance. Almost at the same time, he spread out his divine awareness. This scene caused his expression to change greatly. A scene that caused his heart to tremble violently appeared. She formed a claw with one hand and directly pierced towards Qinda's chest. Qinda's eyes were filled with astonishment. With Qinda's strength, he was simply unable to react in time. As for Qin Feng, Fenjiuzi and the others, they didn't even notice this scene. The Qin clan's disciples also didn't notice this lightning-fast scene. Their attention was all on Qin Yu, who was undergoing the divine tribulation. Among Wu Lan, Yi Chu and Ao Wushu, only Wu Lan seemed to have sensed something and looked towards Shi. In his eyes, there was only a trace of astonishment. He was also too late. Further, Qin Yu's expression instantly turned deathly pale. The distance between Shi and Qinda was too close. When she attacked in an instant, even those who were 10 times faster than her would not be able to react in time. Haha, Qinda, you're dead. If you want to blame someone, then blame your son. You don't have to worry, your son's soul will soon scatter with you. Shi's grim voice sounded in Qinda's mind. At the same time, her right hand formed a claw and pierced into Qinda's chest. At this moment, she grew excited. She even recalled the scene where Wu Lan killed Emperor Yu with a single punch. However, Master has ordered that no one is allowed to harm his loved ones. A cordial and mellow voice sounded. An amiable-looking old man appeared beside Qinda. He grabbed Shi's right hand with one hand. At the same time, he used his body to block Qinda. No matter how much strength she exerted, her right hand was unable to pierce into Qinda's chest. No, impossible, you. Looking at the old man before her, Shi's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. She simply didn't believe that there was someone who could react in such a short time and instantly rushed to Qinda's side. Facing the old man before her, she felt a kind of pressure. The aura emitted by the old man before her was too frightening. That was the aura of a heavenly deity. Upon seeing this scene, Qin Yu heaved a sigh of relief. His heart relaxed. Uncle Fu, thank you. Qin Yu recalled the scene when he had just returned with Uncle Fu. After gaining control of the bewitching God Temple, when Qin Yu and Uncle Fu returned to the Blazing Sun Galaxy's Virtue Residence Star, the two of them had a conversation. Uncle Fu, I suspect that Mystic Emperor is plotting something. I hope that you can protect my loved ones. Do you have certainty in being able to do so? Qin Yu asked Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu nodded and said, Master, I am the housekeeper of your old master, the craftsman god Cheho Yuan. Regardless of whether it might be my speed or my body's toughness, they are both comparable to high-level heavenly deities. Even though I am unable to comprehend nature, my strength is close to that of low-level heavenly deities. I am confident in being able to protect Master's loved ones. Uncle Fu, aren't you soulless? If you are unable to use your divine awareness to observe your opponent's movements, how are you going to fight against them? Qin Yu asked. Uncle Fu said confidently, Master, I have a lot of formation arrays and restrictions on my puppet body. Among them is a 1 aura amplification formation. Depending on how much energy I provide to the 1 aura amplification formation, the area it covers will also change. As long as one is within the 1 aura amplification formation, I will be able to detect any movement. Furthermore, with my speed, even a distance of 10,000 miles would be equivalent to teleportation. Uncle Fu, who possessed the 1 aura amplification formation, in close combat, even ordinary heavenly deities would be inferior to him. Heavenly deities could only defeat Uncle Fu by relying on their control over space. However, Uncle Fu's body was too powerful. His strength was too powerful and his speed was too fast. Even if he were to rely on spatial binding, if a low-level heavenly deity were to encounter Uncle Fu, he would only be able to rely on spatial binding to escape. Only mid-level heavenly deities would be able to defeat Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu, from today until the day of my ascension, the safety of my royal father and big brother will be in your hands. Qin Yu said solemnly. Yes, Master. I will definitely not allow anyone to harm Master's loved ones, said Uncle Fu respectfully. The group of people that were watching the battle were only several hundred meters away. Uncle Fu's 1 aura amplification formation had completely covered the area. Thus, Uncle Fu was able to clearly see each and every movement of everyone. When She extended her hand into a claw, Uncle Fu already knew. With Uncle Fu's speed that was thousands of times faster than Qin Yu's, stopping She was extremely easy. Bang! After Uncle Fu grabbed She's right hand, he casually slapped She's abdomen with his palm. A muffled vibrating sound was heard. She's body instantly turned into fine powder. FFF so powerful. When he grabbed me, my Yuanying immediately left my body. Never would I have expected that even though my Yuanying had left my body, merely the aftermath of his palm strike was enough to seriously injure my Yuanying. She was astonished. After She's Yuanying left her body, she rushed toward the heavenly tribulation stage with an astonishing speed. Not good. Uncle Fu's expression changed. She was a level 9 immortal emperor. Once she entered the heavenly tribulation stage, the heavenly tribulation stage would descend. This would cause a 3-person divine tribulation to become a 4-person divine tribulation. The power of the divine tribulation would increase by an unknown amount. Uncle Fu's feet moved. Uncle Fu's speed was extremely fast. He arrived at She's Yuanying almost instantaneously. Uncle Fu wanted to kill She before she entered the heavenly tribulation stage with her Yuanying. Ah! In an instant, She's Yuanying emitted a dazzling brilliance. It was as dazzling as the sun. Her speed increased by several tens of times. She managed to dodge Uncle Fu's grab. Uncle Fu prepared to continue forward and enter the heavenly tribulation stage to kill Shi. Uncle Fu, don't come in. Once you enter the heavenly tribulation stage, the people of the divine realm might discover you. Qin Yu's voice sounded in Uncle Fu's mind. Uncle Fu's body suddenly stopped. Qin Yu might not be clear about the people of the divine realm observing the heavenly tribulation. However, Uncle Fu had heard about it. He knew that the people of the divine realm could only see the scene within the heavenly tribulation stage. Once the people of the divine realm discovered that a puppet like him had appeared in the heavenly tribulation stage, the consequences. Uncle Fu's heart palpitated just thinking about it. Phew! Xian Shi's yuanying emitted a large amount of energy and condensed into a human figure. However, at this moment, Xian Shi's entire body was emitting rays of light. It was obvious that she had reached the last moment of her life. At the last moment of her life, Xian Shi raised her head and glanced at the sky. At this moment, a large amount of blood clouds actually seeped out from the endless rolling black clouds. The blood clouds that were originally 10,000 miles in circumference actually doubled in size. Its circumference reached 20,000 miles. The heavenly tribulation stage also expanded by a small circle. Seeing the change in the sky, Xian Shi turned her gaze to Qin Yu. Qin Yu, did you see that? The heavenly tribulation stage has sensed the existence of me, a level 9 immortal emperor. The 3-person divine tribulation has become a 4-person divine tribulation. Xian Shi's voice sounded in Qin Yu's mind. The rays of light emitted by Xian Shi's body became even more dazzling. Xian Shi. Qin Yu grew silent. Even if I die, I will not let you have an easy time. How could I not take revenge for Brother Feng Yu's death? The mistake in my plan today was that I did not expect that old man to be here. I truly did not expect that there would be such an expert in the immortal, devil and demon realm. The failure of today's plan is the will of the heavens to kill me. It is not my fault. Qin Yu, I'm going to die. As for you, you're going to die soon. Watch, the unprecedented 4-person divine tribulation is about to descend. Let's see how you're going to block it. Following the voice transmission, Xian Shi's entire body turned into a body of light. Surging energy was emitted from Xian Shi. Finally, following an explosion, Xian Shi completely disappeared from this world. Not even a trace of her soul remained. Silence. The group of people who were watching the heavenly tribulation stage were all silent. Qin De, Qin Feng and the rest were all feeling lingering fear. As for Fenjuzi, he coldly looked at Lian Yu beside him. That hateful Xian emperor. The 3-person divine tribulation has become a 4-person divine tribulation. Will third grandpa be able to block it? Qin Nan anxiously asked in a low voice. Definitely, definitely. Qin Feng said resolutely. That's right, definitely. Yu has never disappointed me. He only surprises me time and time again. Qin De's gaze was completely focused on Qin Yu, who was in the middle of the heavenly tribulation stage. As for Qin Yu, he was only looking at the location where Xian Shi had exploded. He did not care about the aftermath of the explosion at all. Xian Shi, the one who truly pushed me too far was Emperor Yu. That's why he died. As for you, you were merely a helper. The enmity between us was not much. Originally, I wanted to spare your life as long as you didn't harm my family. However, you even wanted to kill my family. Qin Yu let out a long sigh. This Xian Shi might have a very deep relationship with Emperor Yu. That's why she did such a thing. Big brother, the 3rd great tribulation is about to descend. Ho Fei's voice sounded. Qin Yu turned his head around and looked at Ho Fei and Kuro. He lightly smiled and said, Rest assured, even if it's a 4-person divine tribulation, I will still be able to block it. Qin Yu raised his head and looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky. Within the 20,000 miles wide blood-red tribulation clouds, gray-colored mist was seeping out. At the same time, black-colored lightning was twisting and struggling like a horned dragon. It's clearly stronger than the divine lightning of the Gold Punishment Lord's tribulation. The divine lightning of the Cyan Emperor and the Gold Punishment Lord's 3rd Great Tribulation was only gray in color. However, this one is black in color. Their divine lightning was as thin as a strand of hair. However, this one is like a horned dragon. Qin Yu's entire body began to flow with a gloomy golden mercury-like light. The muscles of his entire body suddenly tightened. Even the space surrounding his body started to tremble. Qin Yu raised his head. His gaze was like lightning as he looked at the rolling gray mist and the struggling black-colored lightning. Chapter 494. The gray fog seeped out from the 20,000 li blood cloud and kept gathering. It became denser and denser, and its volume became smaller and smaller. Originally, it was close to 20,000 li, but in the end, it only had a circumference of 10 li. Only at this moment, the gray fog was frighteningly dense, and it was impossible to see through it. Rumble. The heaven and earth rumbled. The desolate planet that Qin Yu and his brothers were undergoing their divine tribulation was trembling. The 3-man divine tribulation had increased to a 4-man divine tribulation. The might of the divine tribulation had increased by several times. Even the planet was unable to withstand that sort of oppressive might. Within the gray fog, a horned dragon formed by black divine lightning as thick as a water tank was rolling. That kind of terrifying pressure caused the hearts of the Qin clansmen, who were watching the tribulation from afar, to tremble. Qin declenched his fists tightly, and his knuckles turned white. Traces of blood even seeped out from the edges of his fingernails. However, he still stared at Qin Yu, who was in the tribulation area. Silence. Everyone was silent. Silence. Everyone was holding their breaths as they looked at Qin Yu and his brothers in the tribulation area. The 3-man divine tribulation suddenly increased to a 4-man divine tribulation. The current 3rd great divine tribulation was much, much stronger than Qin Yu had expected. Would Qin Yu still have a way to survive it? Master, are you really not going to use the divine spear waning snow? Are you really going to hide all your treasures to withstand the 4-man divine tribulation? Uncle Fu also muttered in his heart. If Qin Yu did not hide his strength, it would be very easy for him to withstand the 4-man divine tribulation. However, Qin Yu still remembered Granny Yin Hua's reminder. What could he do? Qin Yu's divine sense clearly discovered the black divine lightning in the dense gray fog. The horned, dragon-shaped black divine lightning was continuously colliding and converging. Originally, there were several hundred horned, dragon-shaped divine lightning. However, as they continued to collide and converge, they converged into new divine lightning. As time passed, the number actually decreased. After a short moment, the several hundred horned, dragon-shaped divine lightning turned into 4 divine lightning. These 4 divine lightning had the appearance of a sharp sword. Furthermore, the sword light of these 4 divine lightning sharp swords were continuously swallowing, and electric sparks were continuously tearing apart space. I see. Qin Yu's divine sense clearly saw the changes in this scene, and he understood in his heart, the last 4 divine thunders that have gathered are probably the divine thunder tribulations of the 4 people undergoing the tribulations. Ho Fei and He Yu's hearts felt heavy. That dense gray mist in the sky with a circumference of 10 miles gave them too much pressure. Big brother, let's block it together. Kuro said coldly with a hint of urgency in his voice. Big brother, before the mystic the arch died. He rushed in as well. The divine tribulation is no longer what you expected it to be. It is too powerful. Let us 3 brothers block it together. Ho Fei was so anxious that his right hand, which was holding the black stick, began to tremble. However, Qin Yu still raised his head and looked at the large lump of gray fog in the sky. He simply did not answer. It's about to descend. Qin Yu suddenly muttered to himself. Xiao Hei Fei, stand beside me. Don't be more than 3 meters away from me. Qin Yu smiled at Ho Fei and Kuro and said, Don't worry, I am still confident about these 4 people's divine tribulations. Seeing Qin Yu like this, Ho Fei and Kuro looked at each other and could only listen to Qin Yu. Big brother, if you can't block it, don't hold back. Kuro transmitted a message with his demon awareness. Qin Yu looked at Kuro, smiled, and nodded. The 3rd stage of divine tribulation has begun. Qin Yu's expression suddenly turned serious. He saw that the gray fog which had been floating in the sky actually began to descend. This gray fog was not descending very quickly. In about 10 breaths of time, this gray fog had completely descended to the location where Qin Yu and the other 2 were. Gold punishment spiritual pearl, grand mist spiritual treasure. Today, let me experience your strongest power. Qin Yu clenched his fists. Then, he abruptly spread open his arms and laughed loudly. Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl Rise. A clear golden light screen, with Qin Yu as the center, began to expand unceasingly in all directions. The range of the light screen was unceasingly increasing. From 3 meters it became 5 meters, 6 meters, 7 meters, 10 meters. An enormous hemispherical golden light screen with a radius of 10 meters was completely formed. The gray fog and the 4 sword-shaped divine lightnings were actually unable to break through it in an instant. Big Brother! Ho Fei and Kuro were dumbstruck as they looked at this scene. Royal Father, don't worry. Little you will definitely be fine. Qin Feng held his father's hand. At this moment, Qin Da's hand was clenched into a fist. It was tight and ice-cold. Qin Da looked at the gray fog in the distance. I am unable to see what's happening inside at all. Qin Da was filled with worry. With his immortal awareness, it was impossible for him to see through the heart devil fog. He was unable to see what was happening inside the gray fog. It was not only him. Practically everyone present was worried. Pow, pow, pow. Sounds were being heard from within the fog. Golden light, it's golden light. Qin Feng's eyes suddenly shined. The 1,000+ people of the Qin family were able to clearly see the golden rays of light. Like sharp swords, they cut through the gray fog and rushed out. The dense gray fog was also cut apart. Master, how did Master become this powerful? Uncle Fu was puzzled. That shouldn't be the case. Uncle Fu was unable to understand. The others were all confused. However, at this moment, Qin Yu felt a burst of carefree. Haha! Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl. The strength of this Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl after being completely refined is indeed powerful. Rays of divine awareness shot out explosively from Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu's soul power was frantically attacking those heart devils. The heart devils created by the heart devil fog were existences similar to soul power. It was simply impossible to see them with one's eyes. One could only rely on soul power to investigate, defend and attack. The heart devils of a person's divine tribulation were more or less capable of shaking the soul realm of a level 9 immortal emperor. The divine tribulation of these 4 immortal emperors had also increased the attacking power of the heart devils by several tens of times. However, Qin Yu's soul realm was more than several tens of times stronger than ordinary level 9 immortal emperors. Under the fierce and ruthless divine awareness attacks, those heart devils were all swept away. How did Big Brother become so powerful? Even the divine lightning was unable to break through his rain protection barrier. Ho Fei was dumbstruck as he looked at this scene. He couldn't help but ask Kuro, who was beside him. Kuro also shook his head. I also don't know. Other than Qin Yu, no one else knew about this secret. In these several tens of years, I had only allowed the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl to devour over half of the flower paste aura in the stellar space. I had only spent 20 years to successfully refine it. I reckon that I am the only Gold Punishment Lord in all the generations to have completely refined the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl. Qin Yu snickered in his heart. It had been a total of 90 years since he returned to the Qin clan. Within these 90 years, Qin Yu had only spent a little bit of time to completely refine the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl. This was also the experience he had obtained from the Refining Flame wristband. This flower paste aura is truly peculiar. The Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl had only absorbed a trace of it. I had only managed to successfully refine the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl. I wonder what the next realm would be if I were to absorb a large amount of flower paste aura at all times. At the moment when he was undergoing the divine tribulation, Qin Yu actually had the leisure to think of another matter. However, I made a mistake last time. After completely refining the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl, its power would not be inferior to the divine spear waning snow. Qin Yu looked at the 4 sword-shaped divine lightnings that were unceasingly bombarding the golden defensive barrier. However, they were unable to break through it. After completely fusing with the gold punishment spiritual pearl, the power that Qin Yu was using could be considered to be a greatly increased gold force. This energy mainly originated from the gold punishment spiritual pearl. Compared to the 18-star Emperor level gold force, it was at least 100 times more powerful. "Break for me!" Qin Yu suddenly shouted loudly. Instantly, the golden defensive barrier with a radius of 10 meters started to shine brightly. As if it was frantically vibrating, the golden defensive barrier began to rapidly increase in radius. From 10 meters, it became several thousand meters. Wherever it passed, the gray-colored fog would all dissipate. Immediately, the heart demon fog within the divine tribulation region completely dissipated. The people of the Qin clan that were watching the divine tribulation could clearly see what was happening within the divine tribulation region. Following the rapid increase in the golden defensive barrier, the defensive power of the golden defensive barrier decreased. The 4 sword-shaped divine lightnings that had been weakened by a lot finally broke through the golden defensive barrier. After breaking through the golden defensive barrier, the 4 sword-shaped divine lightnings struck toward Qin Yu. The greatest use of the gold punishment spiritual pearl is not in long-range attacks. Instead, it's in increasing the toughness of one's body and increasing one's close combat ability. Qin Yu lightly smiled. Then his body moved. Bang! 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 Following 4 consecutive crisp sounds, the sword-shaped divine lightnings that had been weakened by a lot were all dissipated by Qin Yu's fist. Qin Yu raised his head to look. The 20,000 miles of blood cloud was currently dissipating. At the same time, the boundless rolling black clouds were also dissipating. Evidently, the divine tribulation had passed. "Big brother." Immediately, a smile of excitement appeared on the faces of Ho Fei and Kuro. Because the heart demon fog had dissipated, Qin De, Qin Feng and the others who just happened to see this scene heaved a long sigh of relief. In the process of undergoing the divine tribulation, they had been on tenterhooks for a long time. "Big brother, when did your strength increase by this much?" Ho Fei asked excitedly. Qin Yu came to a realization in his heart. How could it be that his strength had increased? It was actually because he had completely refined the gold punishment spiritual pearl, causing the toughness of his body to increase by countless times. Even his metal strength had increased by 100 times. He reckoned that it was now much stronger than ordinary divine powers. Grand Mist Spiritual Treasure, as expected of a Grand Mist Spiritual Treasure. After completely refining it, its power has increased by over 10 times compared to when I only partially refined it. Qin Yu had grown fond of the gold punishment spiritual pearl. The gold punishment spiritual pearl was a metal attribute spiritual treasure. To increase the toughness of one's body and increase one's strength by so much, Qin Yu would naturally be fond of it. However, would he be able to bring the gold punishment spiritual pearl to the divine realm? If he were to bring it with him, he would encounter a large group of enemies. Especially that mysterious individual who had gifted the gold punishment spiritual pearl to the Dark Star realm. "I cannot be greedy, I cannot be greedy. I still have several Grand Mist spiritual treasures that I have yet to refine. How could I be greedy for the Dark Star Realm's clan protection treasure?" Qin Yu forcibly suppressed his greed. At this moment, Qin Yu had no idea that his actions earlier had already attracted the attention of the Divine Realm's experts. Chapter 495. On this desolate planet, excited voices rose and fell one after another. The younger generation of the Qin clan were excitedly chatting with each other. On the other hand, Qin De, Qin Feng, Fenjiuzi and the others walked to the side of the 3 Qin Yu brothers. "Father, I succeeded." Qin Yu looked at his father with a smile on his face. Qin De is slightly excited. At the same time, he is also somewhat gratified. Good you. Congratulations on successfully passing the tribulation." At this moment, Qin De's heart was also very complicated. He wanted to say many things, but in the end, he could only say, "Congratulations on successfully transcending the tribulation." Qin Yu could feel his father's feelings. "Father, let's go back first." Qin Yu suddenly felt a little sad. Because after successfully passing the divine tribulation, one would immediately ascend to the divine world. Moreover, the moment he successfully passed the tribulation, Qin Yu had a feeling in his heart that he would ascend to the God realm in half a year. Ascending to the God realm. Once I ascend, when will I be able to meet father and big brother again? Qin Yu looked at his father and big brother beside him, feeling even more upset. The divine realm is different from the immortal, devil and demon realm. Back when I ascended to the immortal, devil and demon realm, I had the opportunity to reunite with Big Brother, Royal Father and the others. However, once they reached the deity realm, with Royal Father and Big Brother's cultivation aptitude, it would be very difficult for them to reach the deity realm. And if I want to return from the God realm, it'll be very difficult. The bitterness in Qin Yu's heart caused his expression to turn ugly. I can only find an opportunity in the future to occasionally return to the immortal, devil and demon realm to take a look, thought Qin Yu in his heart. In order to return to the immortal, devil and demon realm from the divine realm, there were two methods. One was to grasp the spatial laws and reach the God King level. The other was to obtain status and strength and then bribe some people to help. This method was something that Qin Yu had learned from Granny Yin Hua. As for exactly how to do it, Qin Yu was still unclear. Brother Qin, the mystic the Arch actually used such a ruthless method to deal with us. Right now, many of the Qin clan's disciples' Dao companions are related to the mystic the Arch. I hope that Brother Qin can settle this matter as soon as possible. A cold voice sounded out. Qin Yu turned his head and saw that the one who spoke was Fenjiuzi. Fenjiuzi's expression was very ugly. He liked his current wife Lianyu, but when he first met Lianyu was stronger than him, and her status was higher than his. Why would she take a fancy to a nobody like him? Fenjiuzi had always found it strange. Could it be that Lianyu really fell in love with him at first sight? He had always had suspicions in his heart, but he didn't dare to be certain. Now, Fenjiuzi finally had a definite answer in his heart. His wife had only become his Dao companion because of the mystic Thearka's orders. Brother Feng. Qinda looked at Fenjiuzi and sighed. All right then. Qinda felt very uncomfortable. Those people could be considered as members of the Qin family. After so many years, they definitely had feelings for each other. He really didn't want to do that, but for the Qin family, he had to be ruthless. Father. Qin Yu suddenly stopped Qinda. At the same time he said via divine awareness voice transmission. Father, now that the mystic the Arch is dead, those people might not necessarily be loyal to the mystic the Arch. Thus, it's better for me to deal with them. Let me be the bad guy. After all, I'm going to ascend to the divine realm. Qinda looked at Qin Yu in shock. Qin Yu smiled indifferently. He said via divine awareness voice transmission. Father, we won't be together for long. Let this be the last thing that your son will do for you before I ascend to the divine realm. Qinda's eyes turned slightly red. Once he ascended to the divine realm, when would he be able to reunite with his son? 10,000 years, 1,000,000 years, 1,000,000,000,000 years. In the future, when your son is no longer here, I can only ask my big brother and second brother to fulfill my filial piety. Qin Yu squeezed out a smile on his face. He forcibly held back his tears and turned his gaze to his big brother. Big brother, in the future the Qin family will be handed over to you. Qin Feng nodded. Little Yu, rest assured. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. Immediately after, he turned his gaze to the other Qin clan's descendants. His gaze was ice cold. It caused all of the Qin clan's descendants to feel a bone-piercing coldness. All of you listen up. The mystic emperor harbors ill intentions toward our Qin family. He wants to kill the Qin family and me. As for those people that are related to the mystic emperor, out of consideration for the safety of the Qin family, I must inspect them one by one. Qin Yu's voice was callous. There was no room for negotiation. Immediately, a lot of people started to clamor. Utmost Supreme Third Elder, don't. I believe that my wife is definitely not someone that harbors ill intentions toward our Qin family. Immediately, a Qin clan's descendant fiercely argued. Even Qin Feng's grandson Qin Nan said emotionally, "Third grandfather, please don't kill my wife. I believe in her. Don't." Since she was able to become Dao companions with a Qin clan's descendant, she would definitely be liked by the Qin clan's descendant. Hearing what Qin Yu said, this group of Qin clan's descendants all started to panic. It's indeed difficult to be an evil person. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. However, Qin Yu's face was still grave and stern. He coldly said 2 words, "Shut up." As soon as his voice fell, the group of Qin clan's descendants on the scene felt their souls tremble. The dozens of Qin clan's descendants started to sweat. That kind of pressure made them feel like they were on the verge of death. "I won't kill your Dao companions. However, I have a secret technique. Bewitching. Anyone that is related to the Mystic Emperor must willingly undergo the bewitching test. Anyone that passes the test will still be a part of the Qin clan." Qin Yu withdrew the pressure on their souls. "Those that are willing to accept the test, come forward." Qin Yu said indifferently. "Qin Nan, don't worry." Qin Nan's wife, that beautiful girl, comforted Qin Nan. She was the first to walk toward Qin Yu. Then the second, the third. More and more people walked up. Apart from a few men, the rest were all women. At this moment, there was a woman below who stabbed a man beside her with one hand at lightning speed. Qin Yu, who had been watching from the front, suddenly had a cold look in his eyes. Humph. As soon as Qin Yu coldly snorted, he arrived in the middle of the crowd. He grabbed a woman's wrist with one hand and stared at her coldly. "What? You know you can't escape, so you want to kill my Qin clan's people?" That woman was very beautiful. She coldly looked at Qin Yu. "Qin Yu, you are very strong. I can't even kill a single person under your watch. Fine, if you want to kill someone, kill me." After the woman finished speaking, she turned her head with a cold look on her face. "Nand, you, why did you?" The man who was attacked by this woman had a face of disbelief and grief. That woman glanced around. "Haha. Qin clan, humph, what is your Qin clan? If it wasn't for the genius Qin Yu, how could you have such glory?" That woman looked at her husband and sneered. "Qin Lu Feng, don't make such an expression. Do you think I really like you? Haha, if it wasn't for the Mystic Thearch's orders, why would I like you? The Mystic Thearch has left, and I can't even fulfill his last order. Qin Yu, kill me." This Qin clan disciple called Qin Liufeng's expression changed a few times. Then he sadly sighed. "Yes, you don't like me, and I don't deserve you to like me." Qin Lufeng turned to look at Qin Yu and said sincerely, "Supreme Third Elder, I want to ask you for a favor." Qin Yu looked at this Qin clan disciple in front of him. Once immortals became Dao companions, their feelings were usually very deep. Qin Yu could imagine Qin Liufeng's feelings after being attacked by his beloved woman. However, Qin Yu nodded slightly at Qin Liufeng's reaction. "Say it." Qin Lufeng nodded and said, "Nander is my wife, or at least she used to be. It's fine if she doesn't like me. I just want Supreme Third Elder to spare her life." "All right," Qin Yu said without hesitation. An enemy whose background had already been figured out was not dangerous at all. This woman called Nana was only a heaven immortal. So what if she was hostile towards the Qin clan? The Qin clan was never afraid of challenges. "Thank you, Supreme Third Elder." Qin Lufeng bowed and said, "You." That woman looked at Qin Lufeng in disbelief. Qin Lufeng smiled sadly. "If you don't like me, then you can leave. I don't want to force you. From today onwards, you are still you, Chen Nan. As for me, I am still my Qin clan's Qin Lufeng. Also, Chen Nan, remember this. The Qin clan is only able to rise in status because of the Supreme Third Elder. Our Qin clan is also proud of the Supreme Third Elder. However, the disciples of our Qin clan are not complacent because of this. My uncles, my brothers of the same generation, my nephews of the younger generation, every single one of them are working hard with the Supreme Third Elder as their goal. Today we are still weak. We can only rely on the Supreme Third Elder to allow our Qin clan to stand tall in the immortal, devil and demon realm. However, I believe that there will be a day when our Qin clan will rely on the hard work of our disciples to stand at the peak of the immortal, devil and demon realm, said Qin Lufeng as he looked straight at Chen Nan. His gaze was incomparably firm. Chen Nan was speechless for a moment. Even her heart that had not been moved for all these years started to slightly tremble at this moment. Chen Nan had never thought that her gentle and somewhat weak husband would have such a side to him when he became tough. Supreme Third Elder, Supreme First Elder, Patriarch, I'll be returning first, said Qin Lufeng as he bowed. Qin Yu looked to Qin Lufeng with a smile on his face. In these 90 years, Qin Yu was very familiar with the disciples of the Qin clan. Never would he have thought that the silent and kind-hearted Qin Lufeng would have such a side to him. Royal Father, focus on nurturing this Qin Lufeng. Of those divine artifacts that I left behind, leave one for him, Qin Yu said to Qin Da via divine awareness voice transmission. Qin Da also nodded. Before Qin Yu went through the heavenly tribulation, he had left the several tens of divine artifacts that he had picked up outside the bewitching god temple to Qin Da. He wanted Qin Da to be responsible for distributing the divine artifacts in the future. Other than the several tens of divine artifacts, Qin Yu had also left behind a low-quality heavenly divine artifact. In order to refine a low-quality heavenly divine artifact, one's soul must reach the Soul Jin Dan level. This was something that Qin Yu had prepared for a certain genius disciple of the Qin clan. As for those people related to the Mystic Emperor, Qin Yu used his soul bewitching technique to inspect them one by one. Among these people, not a single one of them knew about the Mystic Emperor's plan. They would only occasionally send some information to the Mystic Emperor. As for those who truly had killing intent toward the Qin clan, other than the woman Chen Nan, who had already been released, another woman was found. Chen Nan and this woman actually also did not know about the Mystic Emperor's plan. However, the Mystic Emperor had ordered that if one day I were to die, the two of you must help me kill the people of the Qin clan. The reason why the Mystic Emperor told these two women about it was because he trusted them 100%. The Mystic Emperor could be considered to be powerful. Even though he had died, these two women's minds were still so firm. Qin Yu said with a light smile. Qin Dai and Qin Feng also smiled and nodded. In this inspection, Fenjuzi's wife Lian Yu was still all right. She did not have any hostility toward the Qin clan. This also caused Fenjuzi to sigh in relief. Half a year's time. Qin Yu only had half a year's time to reunite with his loved ones. Thus, Qin Yu naturally cherished this period of time even more. As for He Yu, he was also quietly spending the last period of time with his wife Bai Ling and daughter He Tong. Time passed. 3 months later, on the gold punishment star of the Dark Star Realm, Qin Yu's figure suddenly appeared outside of the Inheritance Palace. The guard elder who was sitting cross-legged in the Inheritance Palace seemed to have sensed Qin Yu's arrival. He raised his head and looked over. Your Majesty Lu Xing, it's you. The guard elder was a bit surprised. Qin Yu lightly nodded. Brother Wen Feng, quickly come to the outside of the Inheritance Palace. Qin Yu sent a voice transmission to Wen Feng with his divine awareness. Wen Feng lived in a palace on another mountaintop. It was very close to the Inheritance Palace. In the blink of an eye, Wen Feng arrived outside the Inheritance Palace. Wen Feng looked to Qin Yu in shock. Your Majesty Lu Xing, you've finished your training? Do not address me as Your Majesty Lu Xing. Furthermore, not long from now, others will be addressing you as Your Majesty Wen Feng, Qin Yu said with a smile. At this moment, the guard elder walked out of the Inheritance Palace. The guard elder asked, Your Majesty Lu Xing, your intention is? I have already passed the divine tribulation. Not long from now, I will ascend to the divine realm. Qin Yu said with a smile. Wen Feng and the guard elder were both stunned. Your Majesty Lu Xing, why didn't you tell us about this beforehand? The guard elder asked. Qin Yu shook his head and said, Actually, I already knew that I would be undergoing the divine tribulation before the battle for the Gold Punishment Lord. After I obtained the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl, I began to train in seclusion, all the way until the arrival of the divine tribulation. After passing the divine tribulation, I will return the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl to you. After a few days I will ascend by myself. There is no need for anyone to come and see me off. With a flip of his hand, Qin Yu took out the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl and removed the soul connection with it. Although he was somewhat reluctant to part with it, he still handed it to the guard elder. The Gold Punishment Lord was the head of the three great sovereigns, the person with the highest status in the Dark Star realm. Whether or not Qin Yu would publicly undergo the divine tribulation, whether or not he would be escorted by others before his divine tribulation was his own business. Since Qin Yu was unwilling to do so, outsiders would not be able to force him to do so. Lu Xing, allow me to escort you when you ascend. Wen Feng said. Qin Yu smiled, shook his head and said, There's no need for that. If there's a chance, we will meet again in the divine realm. When he ascended, he would definitely have the Qin family and a large group of people escort him. If Wen Feng were to accompany him, wouldn't he be exposing his identity? Although Qin Yu was not afraid of exposing his identity, it would still be troublesome. But in that case, let's meet again in the divine realm. Wen Feng also displayed a smile. In the blink of an eye, Qin Yu and his brothers had passed their final days in the immortal devil and demon realm. On this day, on the plains of the blazing sun galaxy's virtue residence star, a large group of people had gathered. If the identities of this group of people were to be known by the outside world, it would also be very frightening. The demon realm's bird clans Zhongju, the dragon clans Ao Wuming and Ao Feng, the beast clans Ox Demon Emperor and the great ape emperor Sun Yuan, other than the super experts of the demon realm. The current overlord of the devil realm, Wu Long, had also brought his two seniors Mo Luo and Mo Kong. The immortal realm's flame emperor and Jun Luoyu had also come. In the entire immortal devil and demon realm, over half of the power's leaders had come here just to escort Qin Yu and his brothers. We're about to ascend. Qin Yu raised his head and looked to the sky. No matter how unwilling he was, he still had to face it. Qin Yu looked to the group of people before him. His royal father Qin Da, his big brother Qin Feng, his uncle Feng Yuzi, his good brothers Jun Luoyu and Ao Wuming. There were also some seniors like the great ape emperor, the ox demon emperor, Ao Feng and others. There was also Wu Long who was extremely respectful to him. There were also some juniors like He Tong, Guo Fan, Qin Nan, Qin Lu Feng. Royal father, big brother, uncle Feng Luoyu Wuming. At this moment, Qin Yu felt a bit sour in his heart. After parting this time, when would he be able to see them again? Father. He Tong tightly hugged Kuro. She was unwilling to part with him. We're about to ascend. Tong Tong, be good. Kuro hardened his heart and pushed He Tong away. With tearful eyes, He Tong stood beside her mother. Bai Ling was also looking at Kuro with reluctance to part. Qin Yu, Kuro and Ho Fei simultaneously started to float uncontrollably. Qin Yu and his brothers all tried their best to squeeze out a smile to the people below. Hazy starlight started to emit from their bodies. That sort of radiance grew brighter and brighter. The three of them started to fly higher and higher. When the radiance completely enveloped the three of them, Qin Yu and his brothers glanced at each other. The three of them directly disappeared into thin air. End of Immortal, Devil and Demon Realm chapter. Chapter 496. The Divine World was an incomparably vast land world. Since the birth of the Divine World, nearly 120 quadrillion years had passed. From the birth of the Divine World until now, There had been many powerful forces, but as time passed, most of them would fall apart. Prosperity and decline were like the laws of heaven and earth. However, there were 8 forces that had broken this rule. Since the birth of the God realm until now, these 8 forces had existed for an eternity. These 8 factions were all ancient factions that would never decline. And the leaders of these 8 powers were called Saint Emperors. The 8 great sage emperors were people with extremely high statuses in the divine realm. In terms of strength, these 8 great sage emperors were all God-King realm experts, and they were only inferior to the heavenly exalts that only existed in the legends. In terms of power, none of the 8 great saint emperors could compare to them. In terms of weapons, the 8 great sage emperors possessed 8 inherited grand mist spiritual treasures that had appeared since the birth of the divine realm. Those 8 inherited grand mist spiritual treasures were all first-rate grand mist spiritual treasures. Perhaps only the legendary celestial spiritual treasure of the celestial venerables would be able to suppress them. In terms of strength, influence, and weapons, they had the upper hand in all aspects. There was no need to talk about the status of the 8 great sage emperors. Each of the 8 great sage emperors possessed a territory. Of the 8 great sage emperors, the utmost East Sage Emperor possessed a territory located in the eastern region of the divine realm. The Ascension Pool was the place where people from the lower realms would ascend to the divine world. The number of ascension pools in the entire divine world was fixed. There were about 800 ascension pools. These ascension pools had appeared since the birth of the divine world. They were indestructible and eternal. The story took place in an ascension pool in the eastern region of the divine world. Beside a certain ascension pool in the eastern region of the divine realm, there were 10 warriors wearing battle armor. It just so happened that it was their turn to be transferred from this small team. Thus, they had to stay beside the ascension pool for a full 1,000 years. After 1,000 years, another small team would take over their shift. At this moment, the 10 warriors were chatting idly. Only one ascends every few years, and we still have to wait here. This kind of life is really boring. Hey, Captain, I heard that you're going to be promoted to a company captain. The skinny young man said to the middle-aged man beside him. I heard about it too. Last time, when one of our teams was hunting a powerful demon beast outside, they encountered a terrifying ant tide. The entire team of 1,000 people was annihilated. How tragic. Another robust man sighed. This time, the city lord wants to fill up the ranks and recruit new people into the army. Captain was promoted to become a company leader. Don't mention the ant tide. Sigh. Unless you've reached the heavenly god stage, otherwise, when faced with an ant tide that blots out the sky and covers the earth, you'll definitely die. The captain shook his head and said, Captain, now that you've become a company captain, your salary should be raised, right? Your salary should be doubled for 1,000 years, right? The most beautiful woman in the squad asked. The heavenly world's army didn't care about gender at all, only strength. Of the 10 people in the team, 4 were women. Double. Haha, that's right. At this point, the squad leader also revealed a smile. But at this moment, the white mist in the ascension pool not far away from this small team started to roll. The white mist kept rising, and this small team of 10 immediately stopped chatting. There's an ascender. The brown-haired female warrior was slightly excited. The white mist started to boil more and more. It was as if there was a flood dragon boiling in the ascension pool. The mist in the ascension pool with a circumference of close to 100 meters actually affected the entire ascension pool. There's actually more than one ascender and more than 2. There's a lot of them. The eyes of the experienced heavenly world squad leader shined. Immediately, the 10 soldiers became excited. Receiving so many ascenders at once was an extremely rare thing. Usually, only one ascender would ascend every few years. 4 multiple ascenders to ascend at the same time. One could imagine how low the probability was. It was estimated that it wouldn't happen even once in 10 million years. To this squad, receiving so many ascenders at once could be considered as one of the most glorious feats of their lives. Following the boiling of the white mist, a few figures suddenly appeared above the clouds. Chi. Streams of dark golden energy could be clearly seen rushing out from the ascension pool. Every stream of dark golden energy entered a person's body. There was a total of 5 dark golden energy pillars. 5 ascenders, this is truly rare, gasped that heavenly world squad leader. The most beautiful woman also nodded. This ascension pool of our Yuchi city only corresponds to 100 cosmic spaces. 4-5 ascenders to ascend at the same time from 100 cosmic spaces. They are truly fated. It seems that there's only one female ascender. The other 4 are all males. This group of divine world soldiers began to chat with one another. At the moment when they were chatting, painful sounds could be heard from the ascension pool. Hearing those painful sounds, these soldiers did not seem to care about them in the slightest. They continued to chat with one another. Divine energy piercing through the body. Every single person that ascends to the divine realm must go through this trial. Back then I had also experienced that sensation. Truly. That squad leader sighed and smacked his lips. Immediately after, he took a glance at the most beautiful woman. Lu Fei, you must have grown up in the divine realm, right? You all must have directly pierced through the divine tribulation, right? This woman by the name of Lu Fei nodded and said, right after passing the divine tribulation, divine energy shot out from the tribulation clouds and pierced through my body. I truly do not wish to experience that sort of thing again. The divine energy piercing through the body should take an hour. The squad leader looked to the sky. Still early right now. I reckon there's still 4 more hours before the sky turns dark. Time passed. After an hour, 4 of the divine energies were severed at the same time. As for those 4 figures, they were directly sent to the edge of the ascension pool by the white mist of the ascension pool. The 10 soldiers immediately went to lead those 4 people. Why did only 4 people finish? Why is the other person still continuing? The Divine World Squad leader asked in confusion. The other 9 soldiers were also puzzled. This was a rule. The amount of divine energy that people that had just ascended to the divine realm could absorb was limited. The amount of divine energy one could absorb mainly depended on 2 aspects. One was the body, and the other was the soul's realm. The higher the soul's realm, the more divine energy one would be able to absorb and not cause the divine energy to go berserk. The body was the vessel of divine energy. The stronger the body, the more divine energy one would be able to absorb. Is this the divine realm? A voice that seemed to be in pain could be heard. The squad leader of the Divine World Squad, Huang Su, looked over. Yes, this is the divine realm. Don't ask too much. Stabilize your body first. Of the 4 ascenders that had already reached the shore, a man and a woman were half kneeling on the ground. Their expressions were extremely painful and the divine energy in their bodies was constantly vibrating. As for the other 2 ascenders, they were standing there with a calm expression. They appeared to be very calm and did not seem to be in pain at all. However, the 2 of them were still staring at the figure above the ascension pool. The 2 of them were Ho Fei and Kuro. Monkey, that feeling just now wasn't good. Big brother should be fine, right? Kuro whispered to Ho Fei. When they had just arrived in the divine realm, they discovered that the divine realm was very different from what they had expected. In the divine realm, with their soul's energy was unable to leave their body. This divine realm is a little strange. I feel that I can't even fly. Ho Fei nodded. However, with Big Brother's strength, there shouldn't be a problem. 2 of you. The small captain of the divine realm, Huang Su, smiled faintly as he looked at Ho Fei and Kuro. Stop muttering over there. Me ask you 2. In the lower realm, the 2 of you trained your bodies, right? Trained our bodies. Ho Fei and Kuro were slightly startled. You can say so. Ho Fei giggled and said, as a fire-eyed water ape. His body was strong enough to begin with, although he did not specialize in training his body. His body was comparable to the 8th stage of the 9 transformations dark gold body. As for Kuro, in terms of the toughness of his body, he was comparable to Chinyu. Training your body is good. The first stage in the divine realm, the divine energy piercing the body, will be much easier, Huang Su said with a chuckle. Ho Fei and Kuro looked at Huang Su in front of them and had a feeling in their hearts. The person in front of them was too strong. He was so strong that they were unable to fight against him. They believed that if the person in front of them wanted to kill the two of them, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. This person gives me the same feeling as Big Brother. Ho Fei and Kuro both had this thought in their hearts. Since the two of you have ascended to the divine realm, you will naturally have to follow the rules of the divine realm. However, don't be anxious. These two ascenders still need to stabilize their bodies. The two of you already have strong enough bodies. There is no need for you to spend so much effort, Huang Su said with a faint smile. The beautiful warrior Lu Fei frowned as she looked at the person in the ascension pool, who was still receiving the divine energy piercing the body. The two of you, do you know that person? The beautiful warrior asked Ho Fei and Kuro. Ho Fei nodded his head. That is our big brother. Big brother, the three of you are brothers. A sweet smile appeared on Lu Fei's face. How rare. The three of you actually ascended at the same time. Seems like fate has brought us together. Is my big brother all right? Kuro asked. A seemingly thin and weak-looking soldier said with a beaming smile. He is fine. I have never heard of an ascender dying on the ascension pool. Only then did Ho Fei and Kuro let out a long sigh of relief. Divine energy piercing the body. Qin Yu's ears could clearly hear a group of people chatting not far away. This divine energy piercing the body did not affect him at all. The reason why others were in pain was because the original energy in their body was fighting against the divine energy. Once the divine energy pierced the body, it would destroy all the energy in the body and then enter the body and gather at the dantian. But what about Qin Yu? He directly hid the 9 transformations force and the metal force in his astral space. The divine energy piercing the body did not meet with any energy resistance and easily entered Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu naturally did not feel any pain. Others took an hour, but Qin Yu had already been receiving the divine energy piercing the body for a full 6 hours. But Qin Yu was still continuing. At a certain moment, Qin Yu suddenly felt that the divine energy flowing in his body was giving his body a very strong sense of pressure. Qin Yu even had a feeling that if he continued to absorb the divine energy, his body would fall apart. Phew! The divine energy that was continuously pouring into Qin Yu was automatically cut off. Qin Yu's body was pushed by the ascension pool and involuntarily moved to the shore of the ascension pool. This divine realm is truly strange. Upon landing on the shore, Qin Yu felt a sort of restriction from the divine realm. The extremely thick and stable space caused Qin Yu to feel quite a bit of pressure. Big brother. Ho Fei and Kuro both walked towards Qin Yu. I can't teleport anymore, Qin Yu said to himself with a sigh. Haha, teleportation. That squad leader Huang Su laughed out loud. Ascenders, teleportation might be very common in the lower realms. However, in the divine realm, even the high and above high-level heavenly deities can forget about teleportation. Hearing what that Huang Su said, Qin Yu looked to him in surprise. At this moment, the 10 soldiers, including that squad leader Huang Su, were all looking at Qin Yu. You are the strongest among the 5 ascenders. Furthermore, you are so strong that you have surprised us. If my guess is correct, your body's strength is very strong. Furthermore, your soul's level is also very high. You should have reached the mid-level deity level, right? That Huang Su smiled as he looked to Qin Yu. Huang Su thought in his heart. With that much divine energy, if he were to absorb it with divine spiritual stones, how many divine spiritual stones would he have to spend? This boy is truly lucky to be able to absorb that much divine energy for free. Qin Yu was puzzled. Mid-level deity. Last time when he was with Jiang Yan, her soul's level was at the peak of the high-level deity level. As for himself, his soul's level was at the peak of the mid-level deity level. Merely by relying on the assistance of Lu Xing's tear, he was barely able to reach the low-level heavenly deity level. That's very rare. To be able to train your soul's level to such a level in the lower realm, that's very rare, said Huang Su with a smile. If one were to train in the divine realm, even if one were to wholeheartedly train without any other worries, it would take at least several tens of millions of years for one to reach the mid-level deity level. You've reached the deity level right after entering the divine realm. Amazing. To reach the mid-level deity level right after arriving in the divine realm, that was something that was extremely rare in the history of the divine realm. Huang Su suddenly glanced at the two ascenders who had stabilized their bodies and stood up. He nodded and said, "Very well, since you all have already accepted the divine energy and stabilized your bodies, I will be the one to lead you to the divine realm. As the person in charge of the divine realm, I will inform you all of the basic information regarding the divine realm." Qin Yu, Ho Fei, Kuro and the man and woman all looked to Huang Su. According to the customs of the divine realm, all those who have just ascended to the divine realm have the obligation to go to the divine spiritual stone mine and mine for His Majesty Sage Emperor for 1,000 years without any compensation. Within this 1,000 years, you all are not allowed to resist or escape. All those who violate this will be chased and killed by the entire divine realm. That Captain Huang Su had a serious expression. As for the basic information regarding the divine realm, I will inform you all on the way to the divine spiritual stone mine. Well then, let's set off now. Chapter 497. 5 divine realm warriors and 5 ascenders were proceeding on foot. Lu Fei, tell them about the basic matters of the divine realm. Huang Su casually instructed. Lu Fei nodded. She then said to Qin Yu and the others, "Compared to the divine realm, the restrictions of your original cosmic space are simply too weak. All of you listen carefully. Otherwise, don't blame others if you make a fool of yourself in the future." The 5 ascenders nodded their heads. The divine realm can be considered to be an extremely vast land, Lu Fei said with a smile. The 5 ascenders all frowned. In their memories, they were unable to determine whether it was the mortal realm or a higher-level cosmic space. All of them were boundless outer space. How could the divine realm be a land? Qin Yu and the others were pretending to be confused. As for the other two, they were truly confused. The reason why I said that the divine realm could be considered to be a vast land is because this vast land was surrounded by an endless sea. Exactly how vast is this ocean? Not many people know. Perhaps the God King might know. Lu Fei said with a smile. Although the ocean is vast, 99% of the people in the divine realm live on the land. The ocean is practically negligible. That's why I said that the divine realm could be considered to be an enormous land. Lu Fei continued. Qin Yu, Ho Fei and Kuro knew about the general situation of the divine realm. This was all information that Qin Yu had obtained from Uncle Fu when they were in the immortal, devil and demon realm. The 8 great powers of the divine realm are also on the land of the divine realm. Lu Fei spoke frankly with assurance. Huang Su said with dissatisfaction. Lu Fei, they don't need to know about these things. It's better for me to tell them. Huang Su took a glance at Qin Yu and the others. All of you listen carefully. The space of the divine realm is extremely stable. At the same time, the restrictions are also extremely large. I presume that you all have also sensed that. In here you all are unable to even fly. Qin Yu and the others nodded. Even Qin Yu himself was unable to fly. I can tell you all that in the divine realm, only low-level heavenly deities are able to fly. Senior, how many levels are the experts of the divine world divided into? Asked the female ascender who was standing not far from Qin Yu. Huang Su said indifferently. The experts of the divine realm are mainly divided into low-level deities, mid-level deities, high-level deities, low-level heavenly deities, mid-level heavenly deities, high-level heavenly deities and even higher god kings. Of course, according to legend, there are still celestial exalts above god-kings. We are only lower deities now. When will we be able to break through? The female ascender asked again. Huang Su shook his head and said with a faint smile, "Low-level deity. You guys can't even be considered as low-level deities. You can only be considered as preparatory deities. Reserve God." Why? Qin Yu and the others looked at Huang Su. It's very simple. Not only does a low-level deity's body contain divine energy, but his soul must also reach the soul Jin Dan level. As for the rest of you, other than this one, the other four have yet to form a soul Jin Dan. Huang Su pointed at Qin Yu and said. Immediately, the man and woman looked to Qin Yu. Don't look at him. Even if you all possess sufficient divine spiritual stones, it would still take you at least several tens of millions of years to reach his level, said Huang Su coldly. However, you all are already close to reaching perfection in your souls. Thus, there is no need for you to be anxious about forming a soul Jin Dan. Hearing this, Qin Yu nodded his head in his heart. The soul realm was the most difficult to increase. After spending countless years, you all might be able to reach the high-level deity level. However, from the high-level deity level to the low-level heavenly deity level, it is truly too difficult. Perhaps only 1 out of 1,000,000 deities could become a heavenly deity, said Huang Su with a sigh. Qin Yu's pupils shrunk. Only 1 out of 1,000,000 deities could become a heavenly deity. It seemed that the heavenly deity level was very difficult to reach. After reaching the low-level heavenly deity level, every step forward is extremely difficult. As for the high-level heavenly deities, they are definitely people who can call the wind and summon the rain in the divine realm. As for the high-level heavenly deity level to the God King level, God King, if any of you were to become a God King in the future, then I, Huang Su, would have the qualifications to boast to others. Huang Su laughed loudly. God King. It had been many years since a new God King was born in the divine realm. Remember, a low-level deity's divine awareness is unable to leave their body. A mid-level deity's divine awareness is able to leave their body by about 10 meters. A high-level deity's divine awareness is able to leave their body by about 100 meters. As for the heavenly deity level, I'm not too sure about it, said Huang Su with a light smile. Qin Yu nodded his head in his heart. Actually, when he tried to extend his divine awareness out of his body earlier, even with the amplification of Lu Xing's tear, he was only able to extend his divine awareness out of his body by several hundred meters. The divine awareness that I spoke of is merely the distance it can penetrate through the air. The substances in the divine realm are very strange. It might be related to the divine spiritual energy. Even high-level deities are unable to penetrate through the ground, trees, seawater and other substances with their divine awareness. Huang Su explained in detail. Qin Yu and them were unable to refrain their shock. Sure enough, Qin Yu tried to use his divine awareness to penetrate the ground. Even with the assistance of Lu Xing's tear, he was only able to penetrate a foot into the ground. One must know that Qin Yu had already reached the limit of a low-level heavenly deity by relying on Lu Xing's tear. Look at these stones by the side of the road. It is impossible for you all to break them open. However, I merely need this battle blade to easily break them open. As Huang Su said that, he sliced a stone by the side of the road into 2 halves. Kuro suddenly said, "Senior, how powerful is the weapon in your hand? This battle blade of mine." That Huang Su raised the battle blade in his hand and said with a smile, "Although it is only a mid-level divine artifact, it would not be a problem for me to slice you into 2 halves with a single slash." Amen. Qin Yu frowned. Kuro's Kuro battle armor was as tough as a high-quality divine artifact. I can tell that your body refinement techniques are very good. Unfortunately, in the cosmic space below, no matter how hard you train your body's toughness would at the very most reach the level of a mid-level deity, said Huang Su with a light smile. The reason why a divine artifact is called a divine artifact is because its might can only be truly unleashed when divine energy is poured into it. Using a low-quality divine artifact that has been imbued with divine energy, one would be able to slice apart a high-quality divine artifact that has not been imbued with divine energy, explained Huang Su. Qin Yu, Hou Fei and Kuro were all moved. Although Uncle Fu had said that divine artifacts would become even more powerful when imbued with divine energy. However, Qin Yu did not pay too much attention to it. However, who would have thought that once divine energy was imbued into a divine artifact, its might would actually increase by this much? As they continued to walk, Qin Yu and the others came to know many things. Flying was the symbol of reaching the heavenly deity level. Teleportation was impossible. As for divine awareness, it was truly too difficult to send one's divine awareness out. Furthermore, in the divine realm, there were simply no transmission spiritual pearls or similar items. In the divine realm, if one wished to transmit information, one could only rely on people to transmit information back and forth. It could be said that, in an extremely stable space like the divine realm, Qin Yu lived in the hidden dragon continent when he was young. A piece of rock by the roadside is over 100 times heavier than a mountain in the space where you lived in the past. Huang Su pointed at the rock by the roadside. In short, the various materials in the divine realm, such as mountains, trees and even demonic beasts, are all different from the lower realm. Huang Su smiled and said, "All right, now let Lu Fei explain the calculation of time." Lu Fei nodded her head. In the divine realm there is day and night. Day is 12 hours, night is also 12 hours. A day has a total of 12 hours, and a year has 360 days, which just happens to be the number of cycles. When Lu Fei said this, Qin Yu could not help but be astonished. The way the divine realm calculated time was extremely similar to the hidden dragon continent. How can there be day and night in the divine realm? Qin Yu asked. Hearing Qin Yu's question, Lu Fei faintly smiled at Qin Yu. Evidently, Qin Yu's strength had won Lu Fei's good impression. Lu Fei pointed to the south and then pointed to the north. The divine realm has a total of 8 sage emperors. Among them, the Light Lens city where the utmost South Sage Emperor resides will emit the light of day for 12 hours every day. As for the Floating Snow city where the utmost North Sage Emperor resides, it will emit the dark curtain of night for 12 hours every day. The light of day and the dark curtain of night just so happen to overlap. When the light of day is emitted, the entire divine realm is covered in light. When the dark curtain of night is emitted, the entire divine realm is covered in darkness. Qin Yu slightly nodded his head. However, in his heart, Qin Yu was rather astonished. There's one more thing that I believe you all have also discovered. The divine spiritual energy of the divine realm is very berserk. Lu Fei said with a smile. The berserk divine spiritual energy is something that cannot be absorbed for cultivation. Qin Yu and the other 4 were startled. Uncle Fu did not mention this matter to Qin Yu because Uncle Fu believed that the bewitching god temple possessed a large amount of divine spiritual stones and even divine spiritual crystal souls. Therefore, he did not care about this matter. Earlier, when I tried to absorb the divine spiritual energy, I did not succeed. I thought that my cultivation method was wrong. Hou Fei said. Lu Fei smiled and shook her head. In the divine world, only the qi of divinity in the cities is tranquil. Only in the cities can one absorb the qi of divinity to cultivate. Outside the cities, the qi of divinity is slightly better. The further one is from the city, the more violent the qi of divinity becomes. I can't even absorb a little of it into my body. Then why is the divine spiritual energy in the cities calm? Qin Yu asked. Lu Fei shook her head and said, I only know that the utmost East Sage Emperor has a total of 64 cities. In all these years he has not added a single city, nor has he lost a single city. The divine spiritual energy in the cities is completely calm. The divine spiritual energy in the surroundings of the cities is slightly better. The further one is from the cities, the more berserk it is. Perhaps there is a special reason for the 64 cities. Qin Yu had some guesses in his heart. It was very obvious that the construction of cities in the God realm was not simply made of stone. Perhaps there were some special methods used. Thus, the most important thing for cultivation in the divine realm is the divine spiritual stones. As for the divine spiritual stones, they are the wealth of the entire divine realm. Only by possessing the divine spiritual stones would one be able to cultivate at ease. Of course, the divine spiritual energy in the cities is tranquil. It is possible to absorb the divine spiritual energy for cultivation. However, to enter the cities to cultivate. Lu Fei shook her head and smiled. At this moment, Squad Captain Huang Su turned his head around and said to them, "In the divine realm, one must pay a fee when entering a city. Furthermore, once night falls, not a single person is allowed to enter the city. Thus, if you do not spend divine spiritual stones to stay in an inn, you must leave the city. There are a lot of people in the divine realm. However, there are very few cities. For example, our Yuchi city. There are close to 20 million people in Yuchi city. However, there are over 200 million deities living outside of Yuchi city. It is not that they do not wish to live in the city. Rather, even the cheapest house in the city would cost 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones." Huang Su shook his head and said, "I have been a squad captain for so many years. I have trained so many nuns and saved so many years before being able to purchase a house in Yuchi city. Purchasing a house is truly difficult." Huang Su sighed. The other 2 male and 2 female warriors also nodded in agreement. A house costs 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. To earn that many low-quality divine spiritual stones is truly too difficult. One by one, the soldiers sighed in admiration. That Lu Fei also sighed in admiration. "I reckon that, in another couple million years, we will be able to save that much money." Qin Yu and his brothers looked to one another. 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. Was that a lot? 1 divine spirit crystal soul equals 100 top-quality divine spiritual stones equals 10,000 high-quality divine spiritual stones equals 1 million mid-quality divine spiritual stones equals 100 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. There were quite a lot of divine spirit crystal souls and a large pile of top-quality divine spiritual stones in the bewitching God Temple. 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones was simply a drizzle. However, Qin Yu and his brothers had forgotten. What sort of person was the craftsman god Cheho Yuan? The #1 expert artifact craftsman of the divine realm. He was an expert that even god kings had to treat with respect and personally visit him to request for help in artifact crafting. In terms of the amount of treasures he possessed, he would have more than enough to purchase the entire Yuchi city. Uncle Fu did not care about this sort of thing. Thus, it was understandable that he did not mention this matter to Qin Yu. After traveling for close to 16 hours, Qin Yu and them finally arrived at their destination, the divine spiritual stone mine, when the light of daytime arrived the next day. Chapter 498. Not long after, Huang Su and them brought Qin Yu and his brothers to a place. Qin Yu, Ho Fei, Kuro, Song Hui, Shirtian. A woman with a serious expression said with a cold voice, "The 5 of you listen carefully. From today on, you are all members of the Yuchi city's divine spiritual stone mine. Your mission is to hand over the divine spiritual stones once every year. Every time, you will have to hand over 3,600 low-quality elemental spirit stones. Every year is the same. If you hand in less than 1 year, you will have to make up for it in the next year. If the second year is not enough, you will have to make up for it in the third year. If in the end, after 1,000 years, you are still unable to complete your mission, then you must continue to mine. At the same time, during the days of mining, you must not hide anything. When faced with the investigation of experts, unless you possess a storage-type divine artifact, you will definitely not be able to hide anything." Speaking till this point, that woman displayed a trace of a smile. Storage-type divine artifact. Merely by looking at the fact that not a single storage-type divine artifact had been discovered in the immortal devil and demon realm for so many years, one could imagine how precious a storage-type divine artifact was. Using a storage-type divine artifact to steal a few divine spiritual stones. Who would be so senseless? Well then, this is the key to your room. Normally you can place the divine spiritual stones in your room. Other than the person who possesses the key, no one else will be able to open it. Well then, you all can begin to mine. Remember, you must hand over the goods once every year. If you wish to resist, then your identity title plate will be gone. Qin Yu and his brothers all nodded. They each received a hexagonal key. After Qin Yu and his brothers separated from Song Hui and Shi Tian, they did not return to their own residence. Big brother, this divine realm is not interesting at all. Ho Fei curled his lips and said, "Not interesting. It's very interesting." Qin Yu was filled with spirit. He looked all around him. Fei Xiaohei, according to what I know, this divine realm is a lot more complicated than what you all imagine it to be. And right at this moment, heavenly deity, Qin Yu and his brothers all looked toward the sky. A middle-aged man with a resolute and grim face was flying through the sky. His gaze would occasionally look downward. That kind of domineering aura made people feel oppressed. Flight. This was the mark of a heavenly deity. The three of you must have just arrived. That person over there is the manager of the entire divine spiritual stone mine, Lord Yuqi Yang. Lord Yuqi Yang is someone from the noblest Yuqi clan in Yuqi City. A young man walked over with a smile. Qin Yu nodded slightly. Qin Yu himself also had a trace of desire in his heart, a desire to fly. Regardless of whether it was in the immortal devil and demon realm or the mortal realm, Qin Yu was able to fly above the 9 heavens. Who would have thought that it would be so troublesome in the divine realm? This divine realm is also very peculiar. Only by controlling the space to counteract the attractive force from the ground would one be able to ascend to the divine realm. In order to accomplish this, one must have reached the level of a low-level heavenly deity. Qin Yu gasped in his heart. Then Qin Yu, Ho Fei, and Kuro stepped into a mine. It was dark and gloomy. This was what Qin Yu and the other two felt when they entered the mine. This divine spiritual stone mine occupied an extremely vast area. It had a circumference of over 100 miles. The underground mine was crisscrossing. Qin Yu and the other two turned left and right and arrived at an extremely deep place. "Big brother, what do we do now?" Ho Fei and Kuro looked to Qin Yu. Qin Yu lightly smiled and said, "Fei Xiaohei, you two should have heard what those people said earlier, right? I still know some things that I have yet to tell you all. Come, I'll have Uncle Fu tell you all about it." With an intention from Qin Yu, the three brothers disappeared. Inside the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm, Qin Yu and his brothers appeared on a grassland. Qin Yu pointed with one hand and a stone table and 4 stone chairs appeared on the grassland. Qin Yu and the other two casually sat down. As for Uncle Fu, he followed Qin Yu's intention and arrived here. "Uncle Fu." Qin Yu lightly smiled. Uncle Fu respectfully bowed. "Master, what's the matter? Sit down. Let these two brothers of mine know how cruel the divine realm is," Qin Yu said with a light smile. Uncle Fu nodded and sat down as ordered. Qin Yu and the other two were still leisurely drinking wine. The divine realm is cruel. Firstly, the environment is cruel. In places far away from cities, the divine spiritual energy is berserk. It is simply impossible to absorb it and cultivate. Furthermore, in those barren places, the divine realm's demonic beasts run amok. Although the divine realm's demonic beast soul cultivation is weak, even weaker than low-level deities, their attack power is relatively strong. For example, Wu Lan, said Uncle Fu with a smile. With an intention from Qin Yu, Wu Lan appeared beside him. Wu Lan's face was filled with confusion. Uncle Fu pointed to Wu Lan and said, "Wu Lan's true form is the emperor of the divine realm's ant clan, the black submerged ant, if Master does not use the divine spear waning snow, it would be very difficult to defeat him. Black submerged ant. Qin Yu looked at Wu Lan in surprise. Wu Lan looked at Uncle Fu with confusion. Who are you? How do you know my true form? Last time I met you in the immortal devil and demon realm. However, I didn't recognize you. You don't recognize me just by changing your appearance. Uncle Fu lightly smiled. Uncle Fu's appearance slightly changed. His back became a bit straighter. At the same time, the clothes he was wearing also changed. It turned into a jade-colored gown with golden edges. In the center of the gown was the word, bewitching. Bewitching God Temple's housekeeper. Wu Lan opened his eyes wide. At this moment, he recognized that the person in front of him was the housekeeper of the Bewitching God Temple. Wu Lan looked at Qin Yu in disbelief. Qin Yu merely smiled. He had only told Ho Fei and Kuro about him becoming the master of the Bewitching God Temple. He did not tell anyone else about it. The black submerged ant's defense is extremely exceptional. The strength is also very strong. Once it undergoes the tribulation and takes human form, its strength is comparable to that of a high-level deity. Uncle Fu spoke frankly with assurance. As the emperor of the ant clan, the black submerged ant's most powerful ability is to control tens of thousands of divine realms ant beasts. Offending a single black submerged ant is a very frightening thing. That's because it is capable of creating an ant tide. Qin Yu, Ho Fei and Kuro all looked to Wu Lan in shock. Wu Lan smiled bitterly, shook his head and said, "What emperor? It's useless. I am able to control a large number of my subordinates to attack low-level heavenly deities. However, if I were to encounter mid-level heavenly deities, I would still be obediently captured and then offered to the master of the Bewitching God Temple." Uncle Fu smiled and continued. Wu Lan is a powerful divine realm's monstrous beast. The divine realm's monstrous beasts are also divided into strong and weak. Weak monstrous beasts are easily exterminated by low-level deities. As for strong monstrous beasts, even low-level heavenly deities would have to spend a large amount of energy to kill them. However, the strongest monstrous beasts are only capable of fighting against low-level heavenly deities. After all, relying on brute force and numbers is useless against heavenly deities that control space. Qin Yu and the others nodded. Ho Fei, He Yu, the two of you should be aware of the dangers of the divine world's desolate regions. In those desolate regions, other than the threat of demonic beasts, there are many other dangers. Aside from those monstrous beasts, there are also some vicious and merciless deities that like to kill and plunder. Uncle Fu continued. Uncle Fu lightly smiled. The divine realm is a world of cruel competition. In this place, if you do not possess strength, you will be at the bottom. If you possess strength, you will be able to safely live in the city. If you possess strength and become a heavenly deity, at that time, regardless of which city you go to, you will not need to show your identity plate nor pay any money. In the divine realm, the deities are the weaklings. As for the heavenly deities, they are the experts. Only by becoming a heavenly deity would one be qualified to venture into the dangerous and desolate regions of the divine realm and search for grand mist spiritual treasures or precious medicinal ingredients. Uncle Fu said with a smile. Back then, my old master had traveled tens of thousands of miles and climbed over mountains to search for all kinds of precious materials. Afterwards, he had forged numerous extraordinary heavenly divine artifacts and even forged acquired grand mist spiritual treasures. He had achieved great fame. Even god kings had to personally visit my old master to ask for his help in forging artifacts. In the entire divine realm, other than the legendary exalted celestials, even god kings would not be able to make my old master bow. Uncle Fu said confidently. Qin Yu's eyes shined. Travel tens of thousands of miles and wander through the desolate and chaotic regions. Qin Yu's fighting spirit emerged in his heart. However, I must still take the first step to travel tens of thousands of miles. Uncle Fu, do you dare guarantee that your speculation of Li Er and Uncle Lon was correct? Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu said with certainty. Seeing this Zhonglan's realm and being able to control the ratio of time, then the person who created the Zhonglan's realm was most definitely a god king. Furthermore, that god king must have had a certain level of comprehension of the temporal laws. There are only so many people like that in the divine realm. Thus, Master, it is clear that your Uncle Lon possesses a very honorable status. Even he was unable to settle the matter between you and Zhongli. Evidently, Li Er's clan is very powerful. They ought to be one of the 8 great clans. Qin Yu slightly nodded. He agreed with Uncle Fu's speculation. Master, please rest assured. As long as Master reaches the level of the Old Master and becomes the #1 artifact forging expert in the divine realm, then even the 8 great sage emperors would rush to your door and insist on marrying their daughters to you. Uncle Fu said with a smile. Back then, many god kings had gifted their daughters to the Old Master. Unfortunately, the Old Master was completely infatuated with artifact forging. His lifelong goal was to forge an exalted celestial spiritual treasure. Other than that, he did not have the heart to care about feelings at all. Qin Yu slightly nodded. To become an artifact forging expert is also extremely difficult. However, the more difficult it is, the more motivated I am. Back then, I was merely a brat who was unable to even train in internal techniques. Yet I was still able to reach my current level. What else is there that I cannot do? Qin Yu's eyes shined. Ho Fei, Kuro and Wu Lan all looked at Qin Yu. To become an artifact forging expert, the most important thing is formation arrays and barriers. Good, in the 1,000 years that I've been in this mine, I will train the array path in the second layer space of the Zhonglan's realm. 1,000 years in the outside world means that I have 100,000 years in the second layer space. Qin Yu said. Uncle Fu. Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Do you have any low-quality elemental spirit stones? In 1,000 years, I need to pay 3,600 low-quality elemental spirit stones every year. If you help me pay them, I will not have to waste my time digging them out. Uncle Fu was startled. Low quality. Low quality. Uncle Fu repeated it twice. What's wrong? Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu in confusion. Could it be that there aren't any in the Bewitching God Temple? As he said that, Qin Yu inspected the entire Bewitching God Temple with his awareness. As the master of the Bewitching God Temple, it was extremely easy for him to inspect the entire Bewitching God Temple. Suddenly, Qin Yu's eyes opened wide like a ball. In the room where the divine spiritual stones were stored in the artifacts palace, there were quite a few divine spiritual crystal souls. Top-quality divine spiritual stones occupied the majority. There were also a few high-quality divine spiritual stones. However, there was not a single mid-quality divine spiritual stone, much less low-quality divine spiritual stones. Qin Yu suddenly came to a realization. Senior Cheho has truly misled me. Qin Yu smiled bitterly. There are too many treasures. I actually didn't even bother to store the most basic low-quality and mid-quality divine spiritual stones. Could it be that I have to hand over high-quality divine spiritual stones to pay? Once is fine. However, if it's 2 or 3 times, how could others not be suspicious? As long as one was human, they would be suspicious. What was dug out from this mine were all low-quality divine spiritual stones. Occasionally, mid-quality divine spiritual stones would appear. It was practically impossible for high-quality divine spiritual stones to appear. Top-quality divine spiritual stones. Up till now, this mine had only appeared once. If Qin Yu always used high-quality divine spiritual stones to pay, wouldn't others be suspicious? Low-quality divine spiritual stones. Low-quality divine spiritual stones. Uncle Fu muttered. Suddenly, Uncle Fu slapped his head. Ah, I remember now. Uncle Fu waved his sleeve. Instantly, a tall mountain appeared in the spacious grassland in front of Qin Yu and company. It was a mountain formed by a bunch of random things. That is. Qin Yu and Co looked at this mountain in shock. Uncle Fu chuckled. Normally when I have nothing to do I would study array formations, and when I study array formations, I would use spar to set up array formations. I couldn't bear to use high-grade Divine Spirit Stone to set up array formations. I was just experimenting. There was no need to use such good Divine Spirit Stone, so back then, I exchanged for a large amount of low-grade Divine Spirit Stone. Using low-grade Divine Spirit Stone to test array formations, I didn't feel any heartache. Other than low-quality Divine Spiritual Stones, there are also many ordinary crystals. There are crystals of various attributes. This is only a portion. There are still a lot of them in my storage Divine Artifact ring," said Uncle Fu as he stroked his ring with a smile. Qin Yu looked at Uncle Fu's ring. The more he looked, the happier he became. "Haha, good Uncle Fu. From today on, I will concentrate on researching the 900 scrolls of the Array Path. Fei Xiaohei, the two of you should also concentrate on training. Uncle Fu, remind us once every 100 years so that we can pay 3,600 low-quality Divine Spiritual Stones." Qin Yu directly gave the order. After mining in the mine for 1,000 years, Qin Yu and his brothers decided to train in the second layer space of the Jianglan's realm for 100,000 years. Chapter 499. Yes, Master. Uncle Fu bowed and accepted the order. Qin Yu slightly nodded. He then looked to Hou Fei and Kuro. "Fei Xiaohei, for your weapons, other than the cloud-piercing spear and the black stick, do the two of you want more powerful weapons? Big brother, you have them." Hou Fei's eyes shined. Qin Yu flipped his hand and a small boat appeared in midair. A pair of nearly transparent gloves and a tall stone pagoda also appeared at the same time. Seeing this scene, Uncle Fu looked to Qin Yu in shock. "Master, these are the Grand Mist spiritual treasures that the old master left for you." Grand Mist spiritual treasures. The legendary Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Wu Lan, who stood to the side, said in disbelief. 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Since he left them for me, they're mine. I have the authority to distribute them," Qin Yu said with a light smile. Ever since he obtained these 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures, Qin Yu had never planned to refine all 3 of them. If he were to refine all 3 of them, how could his brothers move unhindered in the divine realm? Furthermore, Qin Yu possessed the Jianglan's realm and the high-quality heavenly divine artifact Divine Spear Waning Snow that Cheho Yuan was most proud of. Qin Yu did not lack any powerful treasures. Furthermore, in terms of battle prowess, if one were to walk the path of battle prowess, then without the strength of a god king, even if one possessed powerful Grand Mist spiritual treasures, it would still be impossible to obtain the acknowledgement of the 8 great sage emperors and move Lier's father. Qin Yu knew this very well. To God King level experts, only experts of the same level as them and the legendary exalted celestials would be able to make them take them seriously. Thus, Qin Yu had to spend his energy on 2 aspects. One was training and the other was researching the 900 scrolls of the Array Path. He had to strive to reach the level of craftsman god. "Big brother, we cannot accept these treasures," Kuro said solemnly. Hou Fei also wanted to say something. However, he was interrupted by Qin Yu. "Do not refuse so quickly. Let me introduce these 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures first. The first one is the Divine Boat Flying Yamen. It is a flight-type spiritual treasure. Speed was incomparably fast. Once you have it, it can be said that if you want to escape in the God realm, there won't be many people who can catch you." Instantly, Kuro and Hou Fei stared at the divine vessel Flying Yamen with fervent gazes. In the divine world, the chi of divinity was violent and space was tough. Teleportation. This was simply impossible. Only when one reached the God King level and completely comprehended the laws of space would one be able to easily teleport. Empyrean gods couldn't teleport, they could only fly. Thus, the divine craft Flying Yamen, a flying-type Grand Mist spiritual treasure, was extremely precious. As for the second Grand Mist spiritual treasure, it is called Snow Thread Gloves. The snow thread gloves possess the strongest attack power among the 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Once one refines it, one's hands will become extremely tough, and one will be able to fight against others empty-handed. Moreover, the snow thread gloves had many other functions, one of which was to increase attack power. There are also some special divine abilities. It's the most powerful of the 3. Ho Fei and Kuro glanced at each other. In their hearts, they both determined that this attack-type Grand Mist spiritual treasure was too precious. As for the 3rd Grand Mist spiritual treasure, it is called God Sealing Pagoda. The God Sealing Pagoda could be said to be a higher-level 10,000 Beasts Atlas. In the divine realm, the 10,000 Beasts Atlas could only be considered as a toy. That's because it could only subdue demon emperors at most. However, the God Sealing Pagoda is different. Regardless of whether one is a human or a demon, as long as one hasn't reached the God King level, once one is unable to resist the suction power of the God Sealing Pagoda, one will be sucked into the God Sealing Pagoda. One will become the slave of the God Sealing Pagoda's master. Qin Yu looked at his 2 brothers. Of these 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures, the snow thread gloves and the divine craft flying yamen can be considered as second-rate spiritual treasures. As for the God Sealing Pagoda, it can only be considered as a third-rate spiritual treasure, because one can only be sucked into the God Sealing Pagoda when one is unable to resist the suction power of the God Sealing Pagoda. Thus, the God Sealing Pagoda's true usefulness. It is very difficult to deal with enemies stronger than oneself. Qin Yu explained. The God Sealing Pagoda was completely empty. It was unlike the 10,000 Beasts Atlas that Qin Yu obtained back then. Upon obtaining it, there were powerful demon emperors and demon kings. That was why the 10,000 Beasts Atlas was so powerful. If there were no powerful demon emperors or demon beasts in the Atlas and he had to capture them himself, how could the 10,000 Beasts Atlas be so powerful? However, if the God Sealing Pagoda wanted to imprison people or demon beasts, he would have to at least defeat or seriously injure them. He would have to make them unable to resist the suction of the God Sealing Pagoda. After all, the suction of the God Sealing Pagoda was not very strong. The strength of the God Sealing Pagoda's suction was related to the degree of refinement and the master's strength. Big brother, take the snow thread gloves. Ho Fei and Kuro said. Qin Yu smiled and shook his head. This snow thread gloves can be considered a second-rate spiritual treasure. As for my high-quality heavenly divine artifact divine spear waning snow, its might is also close to that of a second-rate spiritual treasure. This is the high-quality heavenly divine artifact that Lord Craftsman God is most proud of. If it did not contain Grand Mist spiritual energy, then it would not be a Grand Mist spiritual treasure. Ordinary high-quality heavenly divine artifacts would only possess the might of a third-rate spiritual treasure. As for Qin Yu's waning snow, it was an entire level stronger than ordinary high-quality heavenly divine artifacts. However, heavenly divine artifacts were only separated into 3 levels. Thus, they could only be classified as the highest level. To be able to craft such a powerful weapon comparable to a second-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure without using Grand Mist spiritual energy. This was also the reason why Che Ho Yuan had determined this divine spear waning snow to be the weapon he was most proud of. Master, Uncle Fu said impatiently. Uncle Fu. Qin Yu frowned. Uncle Fu could only forcibly restrain himself. How could Qin Yu not know what Uncle Fu was talking about? The snow thread gloves were actually able to perfectly complement the divine spear waning snow. Wearing the snow thread gloves and using the divine spear waning snow to attack. At the very least, their attack power would increase by several times. If the 2 of them were to complement each other, they would not be far from becoming a first-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. However, Qin Yu did not wish to mention it. He wanted his brothers to know. In that case, big brother, you take the divine boat flying yamen. Kuro said. Among the 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures, the snow thread gloves and the divine boat flying yamen were better. The God Sealing Pagoda was of little value. After all, there was not a single thing inside it. If one wanted experts, one would have to defeat them and then capture them. Divine Boat Flying Yaman. I possess the Zhonglan's realm. Escaping is much easier than the Divine Boat Flying Yaman. Qin Yu said with a smile. Kuro was startled. Compared to the Zhonglan's realm, the Divine Boat Flying Yaman's ability to save one's life was indeed inferior. Haha, it's better that I say it. This God-sealing pagoda is mine. Fei's movement technique is inferior to Xiao Hei's speed. Fei, this Divine Boat Flying Yaman is yours. Xiao Hei, the remaining snow thread gloves are yours. After Qin Yu finished saying those words, he pointed at the God-sealing pagoda with one hand. A drop of blood dripped into the God-sealing pagoda. That enormous stone pagoda immediately began to rapidly shrink. At the same time, it assimilated into Qin Yu's body. Remember, first drip your blood on it and then absorb it into your body and slowly refine it. Your soul's level is not high. If you want to refine this grand mist spiritual treasure, I reckon it will take you at least over 10,000 years. Do not worry. Qin Yu instructed. Ho Fei and Kuro looked at the Divine Boat Flying Yaman and the snow thread gloves not far away. They then looked at Qin Yu and were speechless for a long time. Well then, you two can find a place and start training. I'll also go train. Qin Yu lightly smiled and then disappeared. Big brother. Ho Fei and Kuro watched as Qin Yu left. They still did not say anything. With an intention, a house appeared on the ground. Outside of the house was a short and sturdy osmanthus tree. Qin Yu walked into the house and sat down cross-legged. As for Uncle Fu, he was right beside Qin Yu. That's strange. Qin Yu sighed. Originally, he had wanted to extract a strand of flower paste energy from the astral space and give it to his two brothers so that they could quickly refine it. But it was strange. No matter how he tried to control it, the flower paste energy could only move within the astral space. It was simply unable to pass through the black hole tunnel. Master, is there something you need? Uncle Fu, seeing Qin Yu acting this way, asked. Qin Yu woke up. He smiled and shook his head. Uncle Fu, you can stay outside for now. Wake us up when 100 years have passed. After Qin Yu finished speaking, Uncle Fu left the house. Within the house, Qin Yu began to refine the God-sealing pagoda. Within the astral space, the sky was still covered with densely packed strands of flower paste energy that were converging towards the origin. That dark golden bead was absorbing an astonishing amount of flower paste energy at every moment. However, the transformation of the dark golden bead was too slow. A tall stone pagoda was floating within the astral space. At the same time, a strand of flower paste energy had already wrapped around the top of the stone pagoda. The God-sealing pagoda was currently absorbing the flower paste energy at an extremely slow speed. Qin Yu was able to clearly sense that as he absorbed the flower paste energy, his refinement of the God-sealing pagoda was rapidly increasing. This refinement did not require much effort at all. This allowed Qin Yu to have the time to think about other things. Seems that I was too arrogant in the past. I thought that my body was as tough as a high-quality divine artifact. It turns out that only divine artifacts with divine energy could display their true might. The method of using divine artifacts in the immortal devil and demon realm is truly. Qin Yu couldn't help but sigh. Viewing the sky from the bottom of a well, how could one know how big the sky was? His current body's toughness was only at the level of a mid-level deity. Clearly, the divine realm places great importance on one's body. Only with a sufficiently tough body would one be able to withstand a sufficient amount of divine energy. With the assistance of Lu Xing's tear, my soul control ability is already close to that of a low-level heavenly deity. It is precisely because my body is not tough enough that I was only able to absorb a small amount of divine energy. Qin Yu was able to sense that the dark golden-colored divine energy within his body was slowly seeping into his muscles and bones. His body was slowly increasing in strength. My body that was already unable to increase in strength in the immortal devil and demon realm is actually able to easily increase in strength here. As expected of the divine realm, Qin Yu sighed in his heart. Then he began to split his attention. On one hand, he was paying attention to the refinement of the God-sealing pagoda. On the other hand, he began to read the 900 scrolls of the array path. With a flip of his hand, the first scroll of the 900 scrolls of the array path appeared in his hand. With a sweep of his divine awareness, Qin Yu began to study the 900 scrolls of the array path. Every single golden scroll contained an astonishingly large amount of divine energy. As time passed, Qin Yu began to understand more and more about the 900 scrolls of the array path. The array path was mainly divided into killing arrays, trapping arrays, and defensive arrays. These three types of formation arrays each contained many different aspects. For example, killing arrays could be divided into illusion-type Heart's Demon attack, formation amplification-type energy attack, and formation overlay-type attack. Trapping arrays were also divided into many different aspects. The 900 scrolls of the array path were mainly about these three types of great formation arrays. Speaking of which, it was strange. Among the 900 scrolls of the array path, only 100 scrolls talked about the killing arrays. 200 scrolls talked about the defensive arrays. The remaining 500 scrolls talked about the trapping arrays. A golden scroll had a much larger capacity than the jade slips of the immortal, devil, and demon realm. Qin Yu originally could not imagine why there were 900 scrolls of the array path. However, after only reading 3 scrolls, Qin Yu completely understood. Among the 900 scrolls, he estimated that only 1% of the content was about setting up formations and breaking formations. As for the rest of the content, they were all examples. Each and every formation was explained in detail. From the most common 5 elements formation array, it was explained in detail how to set it up, how to break it, where were the weak points, where were the most important, and so on. One by one, the formation array examples were broken in this way. All kinds of combinations would give rise to all kinds of formation array examples. From the most simple and basic formation array, the formation arrays gradually became more and more complicated. At the beginning, Qin Yu was reading about the killing arrays. For an entire 100 years, Qin Yu was able to easily understand the principles and the key points of those simple formation arrays that he had read at the beginning. However, as he went deeper, he reached the end of the list of extremely complicated formation arrays. Every time he understood a formation array, Qin Yu would have to spend several months or even longer. That's right. In this way, one could lure the opponent into an illusion. I understand this. However, how could 18 overlapping attack formations be combined into one? Qin Yu was still pondering in his heart. His divine awareness was unceasingly calculating all kinds of possible situations with lightning speed. The calculation speed of a deity's divine awareness was thousands of times faster than that of the mortal realm science and technology universe. Master, 100 years have passed. A year has already passed in the outside world. Uncle Fu's voice suddenly sounded. Qin Yu was suddenly woken up. It's already been 100 years. Qin Yu's face was full of surprise. He was completely immersed in the formation calculations and did not notice the passage of time at all. The God-sealing pagoda has also been successfully refined. Qin Yu laughed at himself. Originally, he was multitasking. He was paying attention to the God-sealing pagoda while studying the array path. However, as time passed, Qin Yu felt that the calculation speed of his divine awareness was too slow. He was fully immersed in studying the array path. As for the God-sealing pagoda, he did not pay attention to it at all. When he woke up, the God-sealing pagoda had already been refined. You're tuning in to the Whispers of Romance YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.